Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now on to the approval of minutes for the September 19th Transportation Commission meeting. Again, any comments on that? Corrections?
I have a couple.
Sure.
On page 3, second paragraph, last line, it says Scott Terrace and Alden sidewalks would match the existing 3-foot sidewalks, and it's really just a question. I don't remember if they're 3 feet. They may very well be, but that's just a kind of a question. And then under Bike Edina Task Force, where it says in the second line, temporarily, if that could be struck, because I am there for a year, so I don't know if that's temporary or not.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Any other comments, corrections, modifications? Yeah.
On page 2, second to last paragraph, second sentence, Mr. Milner said there is good sightline because there's a parking lot at the corner. When I read that the first time, made it sound like there was something missing. Read it again. Because we were talking about traffic merging issue and said there was good sightline. Is that true, or is that supposed to be was not good sightline? I don't remember that either.
I don't remember. I'm the one who brought it up.
Okay.
It appears that if there's the parking lot at the corner, it would open up the sight line, so it would be good.
Exactly.
So maybe just there are good sight lines because the parking lot at the corner or something, maybe just rewording of that doesn't read quite right. Okay. Anybody else? Anything? All right. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, as amended?
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we're at the point of the evening where it's for community comment. I just want to make a note. This will be for community comment for anything that's not on the agenda. When we do come to the agenda item where we are going to be talking about various things that you're here for, we'll bring that up just prior to that line item. So we'll get started here with reports and recommendations unless there are any community comments not pertaining to the items on the agenda. Okay. First off, number 6A, then we have safety in the park presentation. Is Tom Miller here?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioners and Chair. I'm Tom Miller, and this is Jamie LaPrey from Safety in the Park, and we are going to talk this evening a little bit about the freight rail reroute, St. Louis Park and Minneapolis, that I think many of you know a little bit about. We were hoping at this time there would be sort of a recap, but lo and behold, the governor got involved sort of at the last minute, as many of you know, and so we're on hold a little bit here for the next 60 to 90 days. So what we thought we would do tonight is just run through the background on the freight rail reroute. I know many of you are already well versed in the details, so we're going to go quite quickly through the background, and then we're going to get to a portion that really would concern Edina. So again, thank you for the opportunity. We'll just jump into this. A little bit about our group, Safety in the Park. We were formed in 2010, hard to believe, about 4 years ago now almost. We're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit group. We're concerned about the rerouting of freight traffic in St. Louis Park. Important point is that whether freight is co-located or relocated, we will always have freight rail in St. Louis Park. It's just a matter of what track it goes on, what track the freight rail goes down. We do support LRT wholeheartedly. The track in question is the M&S, Minneapolis Northfield and Southern, which was originally built to be an electric passenger train line. I think that's an interesting point, sort of like the LRT of the early 20th century. And therefore, it's got a lot of curves and grade changes and all kinds of things that light rail of today would have that would make it very unsafe for these long, heavy freight trains. And that is really the concern that we've been working on for these last 4 years. In contrast, the freight trains today go on something called the Bass Lake Spur, which I'll show you on a map here.
I'd like to point out that the M&S in St. Louis Park is the same tracks that run through Edina near the Highway 100. And so they were also built as an interurban and not as heavy, long freight train tracks, not a regular freight right-of-way.
So on the map here, you'll see the black line is, you all have TVs in front of you, I assume, right? Can't see over the ledge there, but the black railroad track to the south there just sort of parallels Highway 7. That's called the Bass Lake Spur. That's where the freight trains run today. The blue track is the M&S, and as Jamie said, that's the one that travels north-south and eventually goes down through Edina, Bloomington, and down to the Savage area. The green track on the top is the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. So of particular importance to us is the proximity of the M&S to our SLP schools, to our St. Louis Park schools. The railroad has publicly and repeatedly said that if there was a child on the tracks, there would be no way for them to stop because these heavy, long freight trains have so much inertia behind them, have so much speed behind them, they take a half mile to a mile to stop. This is in huge contrast to the trains that travel on the M&S today, that go through Edina today. Those are very short, very light trains. They can stop. These longer trains would not be able to. The M&S threads its way between two schools, our high school and our elementary school in St. Louis Park. How many trains are we talking about? There's a lot of discussion about the numbers. The easiest way to break this down is the way we show here on the grid, and this, by the way, is from a study commissioned by St. Louis Park, done by the SEH consulting group. Today on the M&S, going through St. Louis Park and Edina, we have about 28 cars a day going through that track. The Bass Lake Spur today, which would be rerouted onto the M&S, has 253 cars a day. So that's on average if you take all the trains that go sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes daily, et cetera, et cetera. How did we get to this point? As many of you know, the original trains, the trains that we're talking about, were rerouted from the 29th Street corridor, what we now call the Midtown Greenway, when the Hiawatha was rebuilt, and it was placed on the Kenilworth corridor. In 2004, 2005, an LPA, locally preferred alternative, was chosen for SWLRT, and the route that was chosen was the Kenilworth corridor, so the same corridor that handles freight. Hennepin County, at that time, told Minneapolis and St. Louis Park not to concern themselves about freight when voting for the LPA. The freight was supposed to be a separate issue. Then in 2000, we skip forward here a bit, 2011, with an appeal from Safety in the Park and members of St. Louis Park, or the city of St. Louis Park, MnDOT dropped their plan to handle freight as a separate issue from LRT. And the FTA got involved and said, these two things have to be connected if you're to go through, and we are to approve you for preliminary engineering. Then in the end of 2012, the draft environmental impact statement came out that rerouted the freight trains from the Bass Lake Spur to the M&S. Throughout all these years, the city of St. Louis Park made it very clear through multiple resolutions that we will not accept a reroute if there is a viable alternative to rerouting. Again, showing the map, the trains would be rerouted on the blue track. So as you can see in the lower left-hand corner, there would be a large ramp that would be built back west of Louisiana Avenue. This is the original reroute, by the way. The track would rise up, go over Highway 7, over the other tracks, and then north, and then connect up to the BNSF corridor on the north side of the park.
And this is the route that the governor wants them to reevaluate.
Then, in the December of that year, just 7 months ago, or 9 months ago, excuse me, the railroad that would use the tracks, the TC&W, Twin Cities Western, rejected the reroute for expense and safety reasons. So in reaction to that, the Met Council created a new plan. They created a plan that you might know as Brunswick Central. These were the two plans that they actually created at the time. They ended up not choosing the one in red and choosing the one in blue. That was called Brunswick Central. It has a little bit of a shorter ramp and curve, but goes right next to our football field and just within about 100 feet of our elementary school, Park Spanish Immersion in our community center. It elevates the track up on berms in order to avoid the grade changes, takes out several homes and businesses, would look something like this. This is an illustration that we had done showing the train going between our football field and right next to our elementary school. This gives you an idea of some of the homes and some of the businesses and the proximity to the school. Everything in orange there would be taken out if Brunswick Central were to go through. And that blue triangle there just gives you the perspective of where that illustration was created. That's just some of the takings. There's other takings that would be involved.
Those are just the takings from, that would be taken in the area of the drawing. There are more in other parts of the city.
Also, in the co-location alternatives, 6 different alternatives were developed by the Met Council, ranging everywhere from $35 million in cost all the way up to $320, $330 million in cost. I won't go through all of them, but the most simple is to simply move the bike trail. The most complicated, the most expensive, was to build a deep tunnel. On October 9th, the Met Council was planning to vote to recommend the shallow tunnels, which was one of those 6 options, and discontinue all the work on the St. Louis Park reroute. One day before the vote, Mayor Ryback, Commissioner Dorfman, and others met with Governor Dayton and delayed the vote 60 to 90 days. That's where we are today. So that was relatively quick, I guess. I'm hoping you felt so. We're moving on to the part that really could affect Edina. And I'm not sure how much you folks know about this, but there's a major part of the plan, kind of separate from the reroute but connected, called the Southern Arm. So the Southern Arm would replace something that's called the switching Y in St. Louis Park. The switching Y is a Y-shaped track noted there in sort of a yellow gold color on the map, which enables the trains to change direction from east-west on the Bass Lake Spur to north-south on the M&S, or vice versa. And so the way this works, not get into a lot of railroading details here, but the way this works is that the trains head down the Bass Lake Spur, east on the Bass Lake Spur, and then they actually break up and move back west through that Y shape where that red arrow is, onto the stem of the Y, and then they move onto the M&S. If it's a really long train, that train has to be broken up into several 10 or 12 car approximate chunks because they can't all fit onto the Y. So this operation is really cumbersome for the railroad to do. This is, on a long train, something like a 3 or 4 hour ordeal. So it's very, very difficult for them to do.
And it's noisy, the way that they break apart a train, and the banging and clanging when trains come together and are taken apart. This Y, as far as we know, has not been used to go south for decades. In the 90s, it was used relatively frequently for the TC&W to go north to a grain elevator in North Minneapolis, but that grain elevator has since closed, and so they have no reason to go north anymore either.
So instead of the switching Y, the idea of the Southern Arm would be to, on those blue arrows, develop a large ramp that again would start quite a ways back by Blake Road, ramp up to the height of the M&S, and then curve to the south, so that trains could very easily, without breaking up or going through any other maneuvers, they could quite easily just take a right-hand turn and head south down toward your communities. The St. Louis Park City Council favors that Southern Arm. I would say not everyone in St. Louis Park does, but the City Council favors that Southern Arm because it opens up all that area where the track exists today for economic development. So right now in that area, it's called Skunk Hollow. You might be familiar with it. There's a lot of light industrial buildings, very undense. And so they're looking to improve that from an economic development perspective and create a lot of more dense development and a larger tax base. It also gives them the opportunity to move the Louisiana LRT station further to the south, which would make it a little bit closer to Methodist Hospital, which would be a prime user of LRT. And then in combination with the Southern Arm, not to get too complicated here, but there's also a swap plan. You might hear about the CP swap, the Canadian Pacific swap. As LRT approaches St. Louis Park from the west going east, the LRT track is co-located already with freight rail. But LRT is going to be on the north side of the freight track, freight's on the south. The plan is to swap those two, to flip them over. So you can see in the top image here, this is the way that it could be, and on the bottom is the way that the planners want it to be. What this does is this allows the light rail track to be on the south side of freight, where there's a lot more land for development, both in Hopkins and St. Louis Park. So there's a lot of opportunity there for economic development around the stations, and it also gives the LRT riders the ability to reach the LRT tracks without having to go over the freight tracks. So that's what the city planners are hoping to get out of this swap. But When that swap happens, that means that the switching Y is no longer available because that swap would take up the space where the switching Y exists, and the southern arm would have to be built. So they have to go together. The swap and the southern arm have to happen together. The cost of those two is approximately $60 million. Only the SLP reroute requires the southern arm and the swap. Without that, the two items are no longer required. The railroad demands some way to go south, so that's why the southern arm exists. They need to have some way to still get to the south, even though it's not currently being used, as Jamie said, for many, many, many years. And that's why we say the Brunswick Central cost is really $260 million, not just $200 million. So while our main goal, obviously, for the last 4 years in running is to stop the freight rail reroute, we're also concerned about this southern arm because depending on market conditions, the southern arm will make it possible for these long, heavy freight trains to cross several St. Louis Park roads at grade, including Excelsior Boulevard, which you're very familiar with. Emergency vehicles need to go down Excelsior Boulevard to reach Methodist Hospital. There's a number of at-grade crossings. And again, this is modifying this track, using this track for something it was never intended to be used for. It was intended to take passenger trains down to Northfield to see the Dan Patch horse in Northfield, not intended for this heavy, long freight. This should really concern those of you in Edina, because once this track is in, it's in forever. Federal railroading laws prohibit any type of tampering, so to speak, with tracks. Once it's in, and there's a huge opportunity for lots of heavy freight to come through Edina.
One thing that we've learned from the TC&W, prior to the reroute issue being part of SWLRT, Hennepin County and MnDOT were planning to have the reroute as a separate project. So there were a series of meetings in which the TC&W took part. And one of the things that the TC&W talked about was their plan for the future. And they have bought the bridge over the Minnesota River in Savage. There are grain elevators in Savage. And there have been 2 new grain loading facilities built in western Minnesota on the TCW line. Each of these grain loading facilities are built to load what they call unit trains, which are 120 to 125 cars of all of the same product. In this case, it would be grain. And so the TCW, being a business that is for profit, and they're a very nice group of people. I think that they try very hard to be good to all of the communities that they pass through, but at the same time, they're in the business of making money. And so they see the ability to go south as something that they will be working toward in the future. And so if there is the southern arm built, the day it opens, there will not be trains going south on it. However, there's the potential for a great number of rail cars going south, long unit train rail cars, if the TCW builds their business the way they talk about building their business.
So I think that's about it. We showed you here just a map, as you're very familiar, of the M&S as it goes through Edina, and then as Jamie was mentioning, this is just a satellite image of the track as it approaches the Minnesota River, the bridge that Jamie mentioned, and the barge loading facility and the grain elevators that are in that area. So, if it's appropriate or if it's typical, we would certainly like to entertain any questions you might have.
Either about the southern arm or the reroute or whatever, we'd be happy to answer as best we can.
Sure. Any questions? Courtney.
First of all, I invited you here this evening, so thank you for coming. And second, is it possible to get a PowerPoint copy of your presentation tonight to share with the group?
Yes, certainly. Yep.
All right, great.
Absolutely.
It was my understanding that the bridge is not in good enough repair right now to handle large trains, or I don't even know if any trains are going over it at this point. I live fairly close to this in Edina, and we've seen an increase in number of trains, not necessarily number of cars, but odd times of day and night, and they're blowing the whistle because we have at-grade crossings with no crossing arms or anything like that. So it is a concern. But right now, my understanding is that bridge does not operate or is not operating at full capacity.
That's correct. It's in disrepair right now. In fact, like you say, it's questionable whether they're even using it at this point. But I think the point is that if the TCW has a way to go south, it will make it more cost-effective for them to spend the money to fix the bridge. Right now, the configuration of the Y effectively limits the number and the length of the train that they can send south. So it isn't a cost-effective way for them to get trains south, and so there's no need for them to fix the bridge. If they have the Y, or have the southern arm, there's speculation that it will make it possible. And anyway, so, and the trains that you're hearing now, we also have those, and I live along, near the tracks in St. Louis Park. It appears that they are just moving more goods because the economy is doing a little better, but they are not the TC&W. They are the Canadian Pacific. So it's a completely different company.
There's a number of market conditions that would preclude using that southern arm. They would have to be feasible for the grain to be placed onto barges, to go south, go through the Panama Canal. There's the Panama Canal is going to be widened shortly, or that's going to open shortly. The real discussion there is, from a market perspective, is it cheaper to put grain on a boat and send it through the Panama Canal, or is it cheaper to put it on a train and send it west to the west coast? But obviously, there's a reason that the TC&W needs to have that southern arm. They want to protect the ability for that market. And as I said, so there's not a sort of immediate danger, so to speak, for Edina. But the thing is, once the tracks are there, they're there forever.
I understand that. Thank you for your presentation. Other questions? All right. Well, that'd be great if you could share the PowerPoint with us, and then we can bring it back to the community as well. So,
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Number 6B. On to the 2012 Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Survey results. Do you want to introduce this,
Yeah,
Wayne?
actually, Chair Nelson, in your packet we have the 2012 Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Survey results. We started this last year, I believe it is that after the construction season that we're sending out a survey to the neighborhoods that we just reconstructed their roadways. And so we have all the results of the survey in there. I was just wondering if you have any questions on the survey results. I know we have a full agenda tonight. We actually presented this to the City Council in a PowerPoint presentation a couple weeks ago. So I didn't know if you wanted to see the same PowerPoint or if you just want to ask some questions on this. If not, if you don't have questions on it, we can roll into the next item, which is before we send out the 2013 street reconstruction survey, is that we're asking for on that one, if you have any comments to those questions. So,
Okay. Go.
I have just a comment on the survey results, and that is that if there is a way to group them by project, it would be really helpful. Then that way we can see if there is any kind of pattern over the years, or understand the comments in context.
mm-hmm.
Anyone else, Tom?
Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. On the rating scale from not effective all to very effective, what's the value of very effective on this thing? I see most of the average ratings were in the low 2s to high 1s. Are we talking a 5-point scale or a 4-point scale?
It's a 5-point scale.
It's 5-point.
Yeah.
And then the second question I have is, what happens to all this feedback? So there's, tons of comments, lots of suggestions, lots of things people liked or didn't like. What happens to this, and how does it get applied to the following year's projects?
Yep. What happens is staff goes through these comments, and either they disseminate it to either some of them that might be a traffic safety concern that goes to Mark. Mark looks at it and raises the question, should it be addressed at the traffic safety committee level. The other ones are just how we do our business, as far as communication goes. If there's suggestions or didn't like different types of communications, we're always trying to improve those different aspects of it. If there was some comments in here about some settlements and things like that on one of the neighborhoods, and actually this survey was done before the punch list stuff hit this last spring. So those we actually followed up with the residents and made sure that they were taken care of. So we do go through this line by line and make sure that the comments, if we need to get back to people on the comments, that we get back to them on them.
Thank you.
All right. I just have one question. How is it administered? Is it sent in the mail, or is it emailed out, or?
This was online. Was a Survey Monkey, right? Right. Survey that went out, and we sent out notices to people that was online, and as if you didn't have online access, that we would send them out a hard copy to fill out and send back.
Okay.
So everybody
Had the opportunity.
had opportunity to fill out the survey.
Okay. Any other comments? Great. Thank you. Then we'll just move on to the draft 2013 street reconstruction survey and just see if there's any comments there. So you'd like to see the questions changed or modified in any way? Any comments? Sure.
My copy. No, I forgot my copy. I'm going to look at
Have a
yours.
look. Yep.
This is the same one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the same one.
Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll go with this right here, survey, and we'll get that out in the next week here.
Has staff had any changes since last year, or considered any?
I believe that maybe Sharon can answer that.
Mr. Chair, I haven't looked at it in a few days, but I believe question number 1 and number 2, we were considering making some changes in terms of how the questions were asked. Can I see it? Sorry.
Doesn't appear that they've changed from
It had
what was
to,
said, but
yeah.
they may change, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly the 2 questions that we were considering changing, but I can certainly email those to you so that the group can see the ones
Okay.
that we were considering
Yeah.
changing.
I do have a couple. I do have a couple suggestions on the survey. There's a few kind of double-barreled questions in here. I mean, on the first one and the second one, where we talk about city meetings and open houses, I really don't like to see ands in questions, because there might be a different kind of meeting that people like, and so I would separate those so that they have a single focus. Question 8. It says, during any phase of the project, did you experience any conflicts in dealing with the project? That last part to me is just really ambiguous. I don't know, conflicts in dealing with the project. I don't really know what that means, and it seems to me that could be cleaned up. Question 11, were you satisfied with the end result and the final design? Again, I think end result and final design probably would be 2 separate ideas in people's heads. So I would, end result probably talks more to the quality of the workmanship. Final design is whether or not people like the way, things were actually planned out and, on the design. So I'd put those as separate questions as well. And just one more. The rating scale, I don't know. It's a 5-point scale. Neither effective or ineffective is right smack in the middle. I'm assuming then, since you're using this as a 5-point scale, that gets a 3. Is that?
I believe so, yeah.
Which I'm not sure is really, I'm not sure neutral is saying that's worth 3 points is the right way to go. I think it's messing up the results. I'd probably force it into a 4-point, and my opinion would be make it a 4-point, and either from poor to excellent, or you can keep it very effective somewhat. But I think this is allowing way too many to sort of pool towards the middle, and you're not getting as good of information as you could.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah, Don.
On questions 1 and 2, we were talking about how effective the communications are. I'm wondering, is there a chance to ask if they have preferred options? So you're finding if it was effective or not, but do we know if they would prefer to have emails or mailed correspondence? And along those lines, what about using social media or some new options? Do we have any data on if that would be of use to residents? On question 5, I wondered, your level of inconvenience, that's very subjective, and I wonder if it's really a priority during construction, and construction itself is mostly inconvenient. Is there a better question that we're asking the contractors to do something? If it's safety, is there some performance measure that we're looking to the contract crew that we can then measure based on our the survey? And then finally on number 7, it wasn't clear if you have weather-related delays and ample notice of water shut off. That sentence didn't really make sense to me. So during construction, were you provided with ample notices of shut-offs, et cetera? If you had a weather-related delay, you would probably have more than ample notice that it was going to be shut off. Or am I missing something there?
I think they're just saying it, aside from weather-related delays, because those would be often unanticipated, then in lieu of those, excluding those, did you have ample notice?
Right, my point is, if they were planning to shut my water off tomorrow to do construction, they'd tell me 2 days in advance. And then it rained, so I would have known 2 days in advance, and then they didn't shut it off because it rained, so I'd have ample. But if you had a weather delay, it seems like you're getting more advance notice. So that little phrase in there didn't seem appropriate.
And to build on that same question, I would really, I don't know how others feel about this, but ample notice, I think, also is very subjective, and I think I would prefer for us to just give a definition. What do we feel is ample notice? Is it 24 hours? Is it 2 days? And then just ask, was that done? Because otherwise everybody's gonna have a different interpretation of that.
So I'm curious, who developed the survey? Is this part of when the communications were for neighborhood projects? Remember, the consultant helped define communications. Did this come out of that?
No, I don't believe this was done by LaBreche, but this was done between engineering and the communications department.
Okay.
For this. What I'll do is, unless you have more comments, is we'll take all of these and relook at this and revise it. And then if we could maybe send it out to the communications committee to take another look before it hits the street. Because we'd like to get it out fairly soon while the projects are fresh on people's minds, so.
Well, it's good.
Thanks.
Sounds like we have a few more suggestions for you there, so, good. We'll move on to 6D then, the 2014 Neighborhood Reconstruction Project updates. If you remember, last month we worked on going through them somewhat at length, and since we had got them just a few days before the meeting, we decided to wait till this month to look more in depth and ask questions again about them. Wayne, do you have something you'd like to present, or?
No, we're just here tonight to take comments from the commission, and there's probably people from the public that want to comment on the projects also. And then if you could formalize your comments on these, then we can incorporate those in our feasibility studies and get those off to the council for their December 10th public hearing.
Yeah, this is the one where we did want to have an action item on this.
Yep, there should have been a box checked for
it was
an
not
action on
checked,
it.
so
Yep.
just keep that in mind. So we will open it up to community comment on anything, if anybody's here, regarding the 5 different neighborhood reconstruction projects set for 2014. And it's, okay, this is the Morningside B neighborhood, Countryside F neighborhood, Bredesen Park D neighborhood, Birchcrest neighborhood, and Strachauer Park neighborhood, Strachauer Park B neighborhood. And just to, before we get up here, I just want to, I think you have this in your handout, but we would like to limit the comments to 3 minutes. And if you could come to one of the side podiums and state your name and address and let us know your comments. Is there anybody here for any of those neighborhood projects?
Hello, my name is Wayne Lindholm. I'm at 5024 Valley View Road. And I had a question about the sidewalk recommendation that the engineering group is putting in to our Birchcrest B project for 2014. And it ties into the resident questionnaire summary as of August 30th of this year. In the summary results, it's on page well, they're not numbered, but I think it's only 2 pages long. But do you have that document, the Birchcrest B Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Resident Questionnaire Summary? Yeah, okay. And, oh, by the way, it is buried in there, but I don't know the PDF page because I pulled it out separate. But question 3 is residential streetlights. Do you favor upgrading your streetlights? There was, of the total respondents returned 89, 40 said yes, 43 said no. So it's about a coin toss, about 50-50. And that is recommended by engineering to not do. The next question on pedestrian issues, do you see a need to add sidewalks in your neighborhood? The answers that said yes are 27, no 61. By a 2-to-1 margin or factor, it's no, and they're recommending we go forward with that. So that's my statement. And then the other thing I wondered about the sidewalks, and I'm opposed to having a sidewalk put in, I don't see a need for it, is on page 76 and 77 of the larger file that you reference. There's the sidewalk facilities shown in figure 7.1, and that's the 2008 comprehensive plan. And there's no sidewalk shown along Valley View Road where they're recommending they be put in. So that's my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have your report, so I know what you're talking about. It's 92 pages long. My name is Art Thelman. I live at 5132 Valley View Road. And as Wayne, I'm here in opposition to the Birchcrest study that was done and published on September 13th from the engineering department. Kind of along the same lines, there are several documents in there that talk about historic surveys that have been done, and a couple of them have actually been updated. And they talk about pedestrian traffic, and Wayne covered that. There was no, on that section of Valley View where they're talking about the concrete sidewalk going in, that was not mentioned as a future place for a sidewalk. Second point is, there was also a bicycle equivalent to that. The first one was for pedestrians, the other one was for bikes, and there was not a primary bike route scheduled for there either. There was a secondary, but then there was some question I saw in the document about the definition of what a secondary bike path was, and it looked like it was tabled for some other comments and some more discussion to be done. But my point is, there was nothing in there on the previous surveys about a sidewalk for pedestrian, and as far as bicycles, it was slid aside for a secondary bike route. And I also wanted, there's a distinguishing factor between riding your bike as a casual bike rider, which my wife and I are, and a cyclist. And cyclists, Valley View Road is a main connector for a lot of people that cycle to and from work in Eden Prairie. So coming down our street every day are more cyclists than casual bike riders. And so, and again, what I did is I took the survey results that Wayne just quoted And this report was issued on the 13th. On the 16th, a petition went to the mayor, and that followed a visit from Councilmember Swenson, and the mayor actually came out and met with the entire neighborhood. And we went down, excuse me, nervous, the proposed route, and there was a lot of, I'm not sure why we're doing this. So, and again, go back to this whole discussion about do we need bike paths there. The bike path doesn't go all the way down Valley View. It stops at Code. And according to the Living Streets policy that was just passed, if you look from 60th Street, if you imagine this as Eden Avenue, Highway 100, Hanson Boulevard, Crosstown. So if you start north at 60th and work your way south to Crosstown, there can't be any development because it butts up against Crosstown. 60th Street South, there is no commercial, parks, industry, there's nothing there as far as what you would ride your bike to. And so on the primary bike route, it emphasizes going to, I need to read this. Primary bike routes are network routes to access the city's schools and major recreational centers. South of 60th, there are no public schools or recreation centers. So I'm not sure why we're driving traffic, either pedestrian or bikes, where there aren't parks, there aren't places for kids to play, and I guess I'm just lost with why we're doing that and why it's even proposed. And it was interesting. I guess I'm done. Can I get a couple more seconds?
Sure.
And again, what was approved as part of this recommendation was to leave the streets wide in certain sections to accommodate all the street parking that occurs at Normandale Church on Sundays. And if you've ever been down around that corner, and if you look at the crash report in this document, all the accidents happen when you come around the corner off the service road to Valley View, and when you exit Valley View to go down Mildred, to go down Godfrey, to go down Hanson, to go down to Valley View. So if you put a sidewalk and try to connect Valley View, kids are going to be crossing streets to do that. So I just don't understand what the sense of this is. The sidewalk down Benton is cool because it ends Benton from the high school, the old Kaufman Field, all the way down to Countryside. It's one street. That street opens right at Countryside. Right. It fits the whole thing about the school. It's perfect. But I guess I'm not understanding, south of 60th, there is nothing for people to recreate.
All right. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thanks.
What is the recommendation again?
Anybody else on the road reconstruction? All right, we'll close the public comments then and open it up here to discuss this.
Could we go in order, maybe?
Well, I think the last time we did it, we went in order alphabetically. Is that the way? I think Birchcrest was the first one.
Okay.
So we can start with Birchcrest B. Are there any comments on the commission?
I guess, can we get a map up in front of us to talk about the issues that were raised? Please.
Yeah, more.
Mr. Chair, I have a point of clarification.
Sure.
So the comment is that the sidewalk stops at Code, which it shows here on the map. That's only because that's the edge of the project scope on the reconstruction, right?
Correct.
Is the neighborhood adjoining this scheduled for reconstruction in the next year or two? In other words, would this be, I'm assuming it'd be continued.
It is under on the schedule to be reconstructed. Wayne, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 years from now. Or more, 2017.
So 4 years. Okay, thank you.
Could you mind, sorry, I was just wondering if you could kind of go over, point out the comments of what I'm assuming we're talking about the the pink.
That's right.
As far as the street and just for all of our benefit, just
Yeah.
kind of go over that.
The proposed sidewalk, the one that's been referred to today runs along Valley View from Normandale to Code, again, because that's where the neighborhood reconstruction project ends. But there's also a petition sidewalk that's being installed as part of this project from Benton down the west side of Normandale down to Valley View. So that connection is made up to the existing bituminous sidewalk at that location to the north.
Mark, will the one on Valley View be bituminous, and then the one that's proposed on Valley View is concrete, and what do you, or not?
According to the update that Assistant City Engineer Milner prepared, the sidewalk along Normandale and Valley View will both be concrete,
And how wide?
5 feet wide.
And the boulevard, how wide?
The boulevard will be 5 feet. On average, it may vary depending on whether there's vegetation or trees or other items that are in the way.
And what was the assessment of street lighting that, as a gentleman pointed out, that there seemed to be interest in street lighting, but that wasn't proposed? What was the thinking behind that? Do you know?
That I need to go back to staff and relook at that. All right. Just to figure out why, if it was that close, why would we be recommending not doing street lighting?
Is the current street lighting in that area the Cobra?
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay.
Do we know what what are the traffic volumes along there and the speeds? I don't have my feasibility study in front of me.
I believe isn't it marked on Valley View Road about 1,500 vehicles per day?
Yeah, I believe it's about 1,400 or 1,500 vehicles per day. And the speeds, I can't recall.
And the functional classification is a collector?
No, it's a local.
It's a local
It's a
road.
local?
If I may, I just wanted to reread what I had pointed out, gentleman in the audience, Wayne, had said, I had pointed out when we reviewed this at last meeting, the survey responses showed that residents were not in favor of sidewalks, I commented, but Mr. Milner said staff would be recommending it to City Council and let them make the decision. He further stated that a sidewalk meeting was held with residents along the proposed route, and the 28 in attendance were most in favor. So we had two different sides of the coin. Thank you.
If I could back up on the 85 percentile speed is 35 to 36 miles per hour on Valley View Road.
And on this stretch on Valley View on the south side near the church, there was an area for parking to be
Correct, yes,
proposed
yep.
as well?
Yep.
Parking
Yeah, the
lot.
parking remained in that location.
That's right. The block farthest to the east in this location is wider to accommodate parking in front of the church.
One-lane parking on the south side.
Yeah.
I have another comment. In response to the comment that there's nothing down here, I think that's true. I live in this neighborhood. There's no parks, there's no school, there's nothing down there. But one thing maybe we as a commission need to ask, and I'm not sure this is a part of the Living Streets policy, but what's the value of sidewalks as a recreational vehicle in and of themselves? I mean, you look at this corner of the city, or I guess it's smack dab in the city, but it always feels like a corner because I live in it. We are banged up on the east side by 100. Crosstown takes us out on the west side, or on the south side, and on the west side we have those tracks that we were just discussing. So as a regular, recreational walker, I mean, I oftentimes stay within the boundaries, and those become my boundaries. This stretch here is, pretty much the south, becomes the southern boundary, in which case I think the sidewalk has value as a recreational vehicle, not necessarily to take me somewhere.
From listening to it has high volumes for a local street. It has high speeds. So on those two criteria, we would look at a sidewalk. And I agree with Tom's thinking that, we don't get to judge where people are going. There may be people who are out walking who have a reason to be out walking, and their safety and comfort is something that we have to think about, especially when the conditions on the street might not be best for them. So that's just what I'll say.
And I believe that bituminous path up just south of Benton is a continuation of the bituminous path that goes all the way up past OLG and into the Grandview area.
That's correct, yes.
So that makes sense. And I know the football games and the things that occur over at Coolman Field, there's a lot of parking right along that road there. Fairly dangerous for people to walk when there's cars parked along there in that street. So that definitely makes sense as well. Other comments on this? Or is there a motion to move it, do these individually? We should probably do these individually since we're looking at them one at a time. To move this on to the city council? Or if there's any modifications to the report?
Can you clarify, so we're recommending, or we'd be recommending to just move the feasibility reports onto the council, and that's the end of it? I mean, or is this point locking in the recommendations to the feasibility reports?
We're just forwarding
We're forwarding this to the city council
with no
for their
additional
approval.
comments.
For no changes as of now. I haven't heard any.
Got it.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I move we forward the feasibility reports to the council.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to, second one is a Countryside F neighborhood.
Bredesen, Dana?
Oh, I'm reading off the one thing. Yeah, Bredesen Park D neighborhood. Bredesen Park. The last one had the PCI of 0, which I thought was interesting. I should have brought that up, but that showed the average PCI, the pavement condition index of 0, and I think I brought that up last month too. But I don't know how you could get a 0, but since it's an average and the scale goes from 0 to 100. But on this one for the Bredesen Park D, it's the PCI is actually listed as 6 as an average. So this again is in pretty tough shape. Are there any comments on this carrying forward from last month? If not, is there a motion to approve and forward?
I'll move that feasibility report.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next is the Countryside F neighborhood roadway improvements. Again, another roadway that a bunch of roads that are in tough shape with a PCI of 5. Again, these were all reviewed last month. Are there any further questions or comments on this neighborhood? Is there a motion to approve and forward?
Second.
All right, that was Jennifer moving. Nathan seconding. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The Morningside B neighborhood, West 42nd, Alden Drive, Eaton Place, Morningside Road, and Scott Terrace. Any more comments there?
Yes.
Okay.
So we received a number of emails, I think it was about 6, in support of sidewalks on 42nd and continuing the sidewalk west of Grimes. And did you all see those emails? They were, okay. And so the staff has made, as it shows in the memo, some, I think, really great changes since the feasibility study was given to us. And the one change that people were writing in response to is the recommendation to not build a sidewalk west of Grimes on 42nd, and the people who wrote in were requesting it. And then the question came up, well, what side of the street to go on? And some people wrote in and said, we don't have an opinion about that. And then some people felt very strongly that it should go on the south where it would connect up with existing sidewalks. And so I wanted to offer that up. And I had a question about, are Alden and Scott, are those sidewalks part of the recommendation or not?
Yes, they are.
So you're still thinking of constructing the Alden and Scott sidewalks?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are two sidewalks that did not have support, and they're on very low volume local streets that have already a continuous sidewalk on one side. And so on, other than being on the old comp plan, I wouldn't recommend those as somebody who lives in the neighborhood.
Can you define by what do you mean by not supported? Is that from residents' perspective or from
The survey.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go through the survey comments, there were a lot of support. I went specifically looking for that question, the Alden and Scott people who responded, and there were a lot of people who support sidewalks but specified on 42nd, and there was virtually no support for Alden and Scott. And I think that's because there's already an existing sidewalk on both of those streets, whereas we don't have one continuously on 42nd.
Wayne or Mark, do you have a graphic for this sidewalk? This is the thing that concerns me a little bit on this is the amount of trees removed in that area, but it does say they would be replaced. My guess is this is over in segment 1 along the ball fields in the park, south end of the park, where...
That's correct, on the north side of 42nd through this stretch here.
But I believe what Commissioner Genevieve is talking about is in Alden and Scott, is those segments that are the missing gaps basically on the east side of the roadway, east and west.
East and west, the purple lines on the map.
Yep. And reason staff is recommending is that now is an opportunity to actually install those sidewalks. They're only 3-4 feet wide, basically. And actually, after we looked at it, originally there was some trees that had to be maneuvered around, but there's been a lot of trees that have been taken down for whatever reason, disease or new homes or something. So, now is the time to really do it, because you're not going to have that opportunity in the future. Well, it's really tough if you look at West Shore and Cornelia, try to, fit those in, which are hoping to fit in the next few years, but they kind of really missed that opportunity when the roadways were being reconstructed to put those sidewalks in. And then from a circulation point of view, too, is that if somebody's on the sidewalk that has a missing gap, and you want to make a trip around the block or through the area, you're now at an end of a sidewalk and you have to cross mid block, for that. So just for ease, if somebody's out just walking, it's nice to be able to just continue down to 42nd Street on it. So, like I say, you're free to recommend taking those out, but that's from a staff point of view. That's why we addressed those, and besides, it was in the comprehensive plan originally.
Okay, and then in segment 2, you're not recommending that to be done. I think we had talked about doing that. Segment 3 is being recommended. Just again, the only point I saw was that you didn't feel the residents were given enough time to respond. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think on segment 2, you possibly could even do some informational, more public, vet it through the public process, in November, December. And if you get people in agreement on which side it goes on, and then run it back through the ETC and the City Council, I believe that you could fold it into the plans for the overall project itself.
I would agree, because the initial neighborhood reconstruction meeting we had, residents on this section of roadway weren't invited to the meeting because they weren't in the neighborhood. And then also when we had our informational meeting on site, we had talked about putting the sidewalk on the north side. And so those residents haven't been notified that we're considering the south side. So with all things said and done, staff felt that we just haven't given those residents enough notification.
There was another point brought up about crosswalks and some people not wanting this on the north side. Is that what you were mentioning? And they'd prefer it on the south side along 42nd?
The existing sidewalks go from 42nd south to Morningside Road, and so putting the sidewalk on the south side would connect up to existing sidewalks, and then they can cross, if they're going to the park or to Golden Years, they can cross at Grimes, and my assumption is that that will all be marked with crosswalks at
Yeah, at Grimes and
yeah,
42nd, yes.
at Grimes. And then, there's a question about there's some obstacles between Lynn and Oakdale, and then just one house back from Oakdale is the border with St. Louis Park. And I just think that if those obstacles can't be worked around, it would be better to have the sidewalk from Grimes to Lynn than not at all. So, I know from living in this neighborhood that people are out walking constantly, and 42nd's a very busy street for both pedestrians and for, neighborhood traffic.
There's also discussed about having a kind of a ring path. This would be more of a park board project, but around the park. That is not being proposed at this time. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Do we know what the, have we studied the south side of 42nd as far as the feasibility of that?
We have, we've studied the north side in terms of cost, but what we've determined is that there are, staff's determined there are 32 obstacles or points of conflict on the south side and 22 on the north side. And as Commissioner Janovy had mentioned, one location in particular is this home located close to Oakdale, where we have a driveway that is, with this retaining wall would have to come down, and then a driveway potentially, this driveway here is sloped quite a bit, would require essentially reconstruction of the entire driveway, and could be issues with the garage itself, and then a large tree at the corner, which would be very difficult to find your way around. So those are the major obstacles on the south side. There are others that are similar to what's on the north side.
I've walked it, and I know from walking this neighborhood for over 15 years, it's really very flat between and open between Grimes and Lynn. I know there's a decorative fence, but that's not much of an obstacle. So, but I mean, if people want to forward with the recommendation to include the sidewalk, then obviously more work would be done to, determine.
To include the sidewalk generally?
Yeah.
I guess I have a question. If the sidewalk is located within the park itself, then I'm assuming the city would maintain the north side of that sidewalk?
The sidewalk, are you speaking about this stretch in here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the recommendation, staff is now recommending that sidewalk be a 5-foot boulevard, 5-foot concrete sidewalk along 42nd Street. So that would remain within the roadway right-of-way. Some of the buckthorn and some trees have to come down in this area, but we're able to save some of the larger trees, so that would be city-maintained.
And then going north on Grimes between 42nd and Inglewood, the same thing, 5-foot boulevard, or I guess a variable boulevard to avoid the trees, and then 5-foot concrete.
That's right.
sidewalk.
There's a stretch right here in the middle where there are some trees where the sidewalk would, right in plan currently, the sidewalk would go behind those trees.
I guess my point was that the city would actually be removing snow then during the winter versus if it was on the south side, it'd be up to residents.
My understanding it would be on segment 1 and 3 for sure. The city would be based on the width of the sidewalk or path.
The south side here, it's north here.
Okay.
Segment 2 would be, as it's currently was proposed on the north side, would be a 4-foot sidewalk. So that would be resident maintained, not by the city, west of Grimes.
Okay, any further comments or any questions? Or is there a motion to forward this and any changes?
I just want to make a comment. My personal belief is that a 5-foot sidewalk is much better. And in the neighborhood just to the north, Minicata Vista, they have, similar neighborhood, they have 5 and 6 foot sidewalks. And it's wonderful when you're out walking, walking with kids or the dogs or walking, with more than one person. So my real strong preference is a 5-foot sidewalk and not a 4-foot one. It also leaves your options open for maintaining in the future if the policy changed in the city. I would move that we forward the feasibility study with the comments in our October 17th, 2013 memo, with the exception of point 2, and instead recommend that a sidewalk be also constructed as part of this project between Grimes and Oakdale or the city border or Lynn, however it has to be, and that'd be a 5-foot sidewalk to match the other ones.
So just to clarify, you were not suggesting those north-south sidewalks, the continuation of those?
I personally don't think that they're necessary, again, from, literally probably walking those streets thousands of times. It is a slight inconvenience to have to cross, but the volumes are exceptionally low. Chances of encountering a car are very small. And so I don't think there is a need. If cost is an issue, then I don't think that's where the money should be directed.
Okay. Hearing that, is there, I take it you're putting that in your motion that.
I'm happy to leave that out of my motion if people don't agree, or include it if.
Is there a second? Or a different motion?
I'll second Jennifer's motion.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion?
I guess I just don't feel comfortable with having enough information about the segment 2 to recommend it at this point if staff doesn't, so we'll vote against that, I guess. So that's why. So.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I've got one more clarifying question then. On this, this is the part that's not going to be constructed this year, right? I mean, the construction's all back, and is that on the schedule for any time in the future? No.
No.
But it can be done.
It can be done as a standalone, essentially as it would be now without the roadway being reconstructed in the future.
I just don't have
And Jennifer, your motion is for sidewalks on both sides or just on the north side or either? What was?
The motion would be on one side.
And you're open to?
TBD.
Yeah, to be determined based on further information. And I forgot to mention, it is on the comp plan. And I think that even though it could be done in the future, I think we know from Cornelia, we're still waiting. I think that it's very unlikely that it would be fit in the future. And I think there are some cost savings associated with including it in this project.
Is that also in your motion? I guess we need to know whether those north-south, you said they would either be in or not, or how do you want to leave the motion, and then we'll need the second?
I'm assuming the motion is on leaving them in. They're in the comp plan, and that seems to be, yeah.
I have one more clarifying question. So is there no way we can't come to a resolution on what it could look like and where it could go before this project goes ahead?
We'd have to do some additional feasibility studies for the south side. We've done very preliminary work on that since the initial feasibility study looked at the north side. So I'm not sure how quickly we can do that. Certainly, might be able to get that in and out to this group before the
November.
the 10th. Yeah.
Before the November meeting, I mean, we want to finalize these feasibilities. There's a number of them that the staff has to finalize before the December 10th, but we can have that straggle in here in November along with the 54th Street project to get your final comments too on, for that segment.
Okay, then I have another question. So if you were going to study this some more, what would you hope to learn from the neighbors? Or from the neighbors, or as you look at the neighborhood, what more are you hoping to, what's unknown at this point?
Well, what's unknown is the real impact on, certainly on the home and tree to the west. That would be the biggest impact if the sidewalk were to go all the way to Oakdale or to the city limits. That's something that we haven't done in terms of engineering studies, taking a look at how much excavation would be necessary, how much reconstruction of the driveway or yard or even retaining walls would be necessary.
Not only that, is that we have not notified, we've notified the people adjacent to 42nd, but we haven't gone up into the blocks to notify people about a potential sidewalk. And that's been kind of our norm is notifying people to get input from more than people just adjacent to where the sidewalk is going in. So that they'd have to go back and notify maybe a block or two away and host an informational meeting and get some input from the public.
Could I just comment on that, though? I mean, I think more notice is better than less. But historically, people were notified because they may have been included in the benefited area and they would have been charged for it. But in this case, it will come out of the PACS fund. And so, although I'm all for more notice, I think that now we've moved into a different funding strategy. And so I don't know if that's a, make it or break it argument, but I'd say notify everybody. It's fine.
Okay, well, there's a motion on the table and it's seconded. We've discussed it. I guess we have the opportunity to table it if you want till next meeting, but I would suggest we go ahead and vote. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2. All right, thank you. And then the final neighborhood is the Stratford Park B neighborhood roadway improvements. This is Abbott Avenue, West 62nd Street, York Avenue, and Zenith Avenue. And this again, they were looking at putting a parking lane along West 62nd and a sidewalk along that park. Is that correct? Any comments on that, or is there a motion to move that through to the council?
My only question was the RUs. I think that was going to be looked into again, whether the park should be 2 or 3. And so I don't know if that was addressed.
I don't believe it was. No.
Okay.
But that will be addressed before it goes to the council.
Council. Okay. Motion.
Yeah, I'll move the forwarding of the Stratford Park feasibility study.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. That's it for item 6D. We'll move on to 6E, the 54th Street reconstruction and Arden Park stormwater management plan. And this will be presented, Wayne? Okay.
Oh, it must be a little Weber thing or something. Oh, that one goes up and down. I think it's probably on that. Is there one on that side?
Chair and Commissioners, this project here is the first time that you're seeing the 54th Street roadway reconstruction project. What I'm going to do is actually have Toby Moose with SEH actually go through the presentation, and then if you want to, have some questions of of SAH. And we also have Paul Pascal here also tonight to answer any detailed questions. Then if you wanted to open it up to the public for comments. And then this one, since this is the first time you're seeing this project, is that we'd like to bring this back in November for your final comments before it goes to the City Council itself. This is kind of somewhat of a fast-paced project for preliminary design itself. So what you're seeing in the feasibility study and that you have in front of you is probably about 80-90% completion. So there's a lot of missing blanks still, costs, those types of things, and going forward into November, those will be starting to be filled in, and obviously before December 10th, before it gets to the City Council. So we wanted to kind of show you what the recommendation for the design is tonight, and then take comments on that as far as the roadway portion of it goes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Toby.
Thanks, Wayne. Hi, I'm Toby Muse from SEH. I'm the project manager on the project, and the city has hired, I work with SEH, and the city has hired us to look at the feasibility of reconstructing 54th Street. Project is located just south of 50th Street. The west border is Wooddale Avenue, and the east border is France Avenue. Minnehaha Creek runs essentially right through the middle of the project area. Some project details. This segment of roadway is a municipal state aid road. It's a half a mile long, and there is an existing bridge located over Minnehaha Creek. The project has gone through a couple of different processes and evaluations that's a little bit different than you've seen on other street reconstruction projects that the city has undertaken. One and the main one being a robust stakeholder engagement process. This has been a pilot process to help shape the design and the recommendations that are included in the study that you're going to see tonight, or that you've already received, but I'll touch on the recommendations here in a little bit. We've also incorporated use of a tool called the Envision Sustainability Evaluation, and I wanted to give you just a brief summary of what this evaluation is. It's a scoring system that's been created by associations within I call it the infrastructure industry, the American Public Works, American Society of Civil Engineers, and the Council for Engineering Companies. And they've partnered with the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure, and what it does is it tries to help measure what effect your decisions are having and your recommendations are having from a sustainability standpoint. Now, the graph down in the lower right corner of the slide is kind of where we're at today. In October, we're nearing the end of the preliminary engineering stage. There's a lot more to do in terms of final design and construction if the project moves forward, and ultimately the overall scoring of the project would increase as the project moves on. The system is made, or it's been created to try and evaluate a project as a whole from beginning to end. And as I mentioned, right now we're just in the preliminary engineering phase of the project. Get into some existing street details. This segment of 54th is essentially two distinct or different street sections depending on where you are in relation to the creek. So west of the creek, there's a section of roadway that has, for the most part, no curb and gutter, dedicated bicycle lanes, and it varies in width anywhere from 29 feet to 34 feet wide. And then when you go east of the creek, that section has curb and gutter, advisory bicycle lanes, and it also has parking on both sides of the street, and it has an existing width of 40 feet wide from face of curb to face of curb. The picture in the lower left-hand corner is the west segment. The picture in the lower right is the east segment, and especially on the west end, you can see that the city's tried to perform normal maintenance to extend the life of the pavement on that end, and also over on the east end, you see a lot of cracking in the pavement. So overall, the pavement is in relatively poor condition. There are a couple intersections just east and west of Minnehaha Creek that have long radii, and those long radii introduce turning vehicle speeds that are typically higher than recommended or desired. There's also diminish pedestrian crossing safety because you have a large expanse of pavement at these intersections that isn't as typical as a regular T'd intersection would be throughout most of the city. And it also requires some additional city resources for maintenance during the wintertime with snow removal operations. Some existing corridor details all the way from Wooddale to France. Metro Transit operates 7 bus stops in the corridor. There is a stop sign, or there are multiple stop signs, I guess one in each direction at the Minnehaha Boulevard intersection. There are 24 driveway entrances along the corridor. The picture on the lower left is at 5400 Brookview Avenue, a relatively flat driveway, and just across the street is a driveway at 5336 Brookview Avenue that is very steep. So it provides some challenges in terms of the topography of the site. In addition, there's Cobra head lighting throughout the corridor on the south side of the street, and it's mounted to the wood utility poles that carry the primary power all the way through the corridor. A few more details. The ADT of this segment is 2,400. The 85th percentile speeds, as measured by the city, is right at the 30 mile an hour rate. There is a parking demand based on a parking study that was completed. There is a parking demand on Sundays in front of the Edina Community Lutheran Church, just east of the creek. Otherwise, one lane is sufficient on the east end from the bridge to France Avenue in terms of the parking needs for the area. There are also 14 private retaining walls and or landscaping features located within the right-of-way. The picture on the slide is an example of one of those situations. The existing bridge that I mentioned earlier that is over Minnehaha Creek was originally constructed in 1935, and again it was widened in 1948. MnDOT has rated the bridge structurally deficient, and it's also rated the railing as substandard. And the bridge is load restricted, and it is posted. There's lower left-hand picture is obviously a picture of that bridge and the creek with the existing rapids. And then the picture on the lower right is the posting of the load restrictions. As I mentioned, the project undertook a kind of a robust pilot public engagement process, and we thought it'd be useful to kind of show what, I guess the goal of the process was to try and include the public and try and include all the stakeholders involved in the 54th Street area to help make decisions and ultimately develop alternatives and try and come to a consensus in terms of recommendations on the design. And this following table kind of summarizes the impact of that process. The column called Summer of 2013 is kind of really where we started the process and where stakeholders were providing issues and needs and feedback. And the second column called October of 2013 is where we are now in terms of what you see in the draft feasibility study. I'm going to run through a few of these right now because really what I think this table does is it starts to show that the stakeholder feedback that we received directly shaped the design and the recommendations that you do now see in the draft study. Started out with 5-foot turf boulevards in between the street and the sidewalk, and we heard a lot of feedback that stakeholders didn't want a wide corridor, especially on the west end. So now there's a 1-foot concrete boulevard recommended. Lane width started out a wide 17 feet total, 11-foot vehicle with 6-foot dedicated bicycle lanes, and due to stakeholder feedback, 14-foot sharrows are now recommended. Sidewalk width has not changed. Generally a favorable, people prefer a 5-foot sidewalk. Lighting type wasn't specified at the beginning, but through the feedback process we heard that downward facing and dark sky type lighting is preferred. Similar for these next 3 bus stop pads, bike racks and wayfinding signs, we presented it as options for folks, and none of those kind of made it through the process. Tree removals of the entire corridor. When we started out with some wider sections, we had some tree removals, 8 shown throughout the corridor. Now we don't have any. Relocating bus stops, we showed that as being an option, and what we heard was people were in favor of that, especially the bus stop down by the intersection of Minnehaha Boulevard and 54th Street, and staff will work with Metro Transit to do what they can to relocate those bus stops. One of the big issues and concerns we heard from folks was the crossing safety at the bridge and near that Minnehaha Boulevard intersection. Right away, a lot of options were presented in terms of stop signs and flashing signs, zebra crosswalks and the like. And the stop sign condition is now included and it's recommended, shown in the study. Feedback presented didn't necessarily favor any flashing signs or zebra crosswalks or anything like that. It was more keep it as simple as you can, don't draw attention to it. So those weren't included. And then a shelf under the bridge is now proposed. You see it in the draft study. I'll touch on that in a little bit here. Under the bridge to reduce the amount of pedestrian crossings that are occurring, a lot from the recreational use that occurs at that creek at that location. In terms of the bridge, again at the beginning, an arch-style bridge and also a slab or flat-style bridge, which is like what's there now, were presented. I think we've come to a consensus that the arch is a favorable type of bridge to install. One thing we heard over and over again was keep it as natural as you can and try and complement the creek as much as you can. A highway bridge isn't preferred. It's as small and natural as you can make it. In terms of lighting and railing and aesthetics on the bridge, we have presented options. We haven't landed on an actual final design yet, and further feedback is going to be required. Staff is planning on having some more public meetings during the design phase, and then ultimately there would be some more online surveys that would be done as well. The proposed roadway improvements on the west segment includes 14-foot shared vehicle and bicycle lanes in both directions, curb and gutter on both sides of the street, a 1-foot concrete boulevard on the north side with adjacent to a 5-foot sidewalk. And the issues and needs that were addressed by implementing this section includes minimizing the impact to the right-of-way as much as possible, because we're introducing the narrowest lanes and sidewalk widths that we can, or that feedback garnered or supported. On average, we're approximately 3 foot wider than the existing edge of street, and it would all be be pushed to the north due to the overhead power lines that I talked about earlier that are located on the south side right up against the edge of the street. This section results in no tree removals. Again, the sidewalk on the north side with that, what we'll call a detectable warning strip, that 1-foot concrete boulevard is an exposed aggregate that would allow for detection for somebody with, for example, sight problems to tell that they're veering off course. And the Sharrow condition that is proposed is consistent, and you'll see that throughout the sections that are recommended. There is a Sharrow condition proposed throughout the entire corridor. Consistency being important for users so that there's no confusion as to where they need to be. Moving over to the east section, this section is from the bridge to about 350 feet east, approximately right up to Halifax Avenue. Here there's a 14-foot shared vehicle lane on the eastbound side with a 7-foot parking lane on the south. And then we've introduced an 18-foot shared bicycle lane that allows for Sunday parking only near the Edina Community Lutheran Church due to the parking needs there on Sundays. Again, similarly and consistently, the 1-foot concrete boulevard and the 5-foot sidewalk on the north side of the street. Here, 5 foot wider than existing to the north. Again, no tree removals, and as I mentioned, it accommodates that parking need on Sundays. This section is east of Halifax, and essentially it removes the no parking on Sunday section and just goes to two 14-foot wide shared vehicle and bicycle lanes. The 7-foot parking lane is consistent throughout the east side, and again, so is this sidewalk and the 1-foot boulevard. The intersections that I mentioned earlier at Park Place and Minnehaha Boulevard are proposed to be narrowed, provided that turning movements for buses and garbage trucks and larger vehicles will work to reduce turning vehicular speeds, make the turns more deliberate for drivers and predictable for pedestrians that might be crossing there, and it decreases maintenance that the city needs to do during the wintertime. A few of the proposed corridor details, again, coordinating bus stop consolidation was a big thing that we heard in the feedback. There's a lot of bus stops out here. Do we really need this many? Staff will talk with Metro Transit to determine that possibility, as well as relocating that bus stop at Minnehaha Boulevard. As I mentioned, the stop signs will remain at the intersection, and the lights, I've got the city standard lights shown here at the bottom. As mentioned, they're generally supported. The exact style will be determined, and it is proposed to put those obviously with the sidewalk to light the sidewalk. Proposed bridge improvements, the photo shown on this slide is a concept. Again, we haven't determined the actual final design yet, but this is one that is at least favorable as a starting point with a lot of the stakeholders involved. It's more of a natural looking bridge. One item to note here is the recommended improvement here is to raise the bridge deck approximately 3 feet to accommodate a shelf underneath. And the shelf would help mitigate the pedestrian crossings that occur on top of 54th Street, mainly by the users of the creek, the recreational users that if they're shooting the existing rapids that are there, they tend to want to do that over and over again, and it creates a lot of pedestrian crossings, which from the stakeholders we heard was a big safety concern with that many crossings occurring. Again, the exact railing, lighting, and aesthetic treatments would be determined at a further feedback session with stakeholders. Here's a typical section of the bridge, 17-foot shared vehicle and bicycle lanes with a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side, again to remain consistent with where the sidewalk is proposed on both east and west of the creek. This width provides a sufficient width to accommodate future needs. The city only gets really one chance to build a bridge. They don't want to build it too narrow. They'd like to accommodate any future needs that may come up. Again, a Sharrow type facility here, and then a decorative knee wall and some railing for safety protection against vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. The project schedule, again, we've had several in-person public sessions as well as some online feedback that we've gathered. We started in June, and June and July we went through some issues and needs gathering, trying to find out what are the problems out here, mainly trying to talk to the folks that live on the corridor, that use the corridor, and they've identified a lot for us. And then we moved into starting to put together design components in August. And then from those design components, we started to build scenarios with some rough sketches of these typical sections. And now we've got them refined down to recommended sections, and that's what you're seeing in the study right now. Last night we just held another public design feedback session. We're actually still in the feedback collecting stage, if you want to call it that. We'll have an online survey for the folks that couldn't make the meeting last night. And ultimately, we'll take that along with your comments and then finalize our study to arrive at presenting the study to the council on December 10th. If the council decides to move forward, the bid opening would be in either March or April of next year, with the awarding of contract and construction starting also in 2014. Construction would be able to be completed in one construction season, with the final assessment hearing occurring in the fall of 2015. Thank you. We'll take any questions or comments you may have.
Are there any questions directly for the consultant? Otherwise,
I had one right off the bat. You referenced the electrical line being a barrier. Can you talk more about that and whether options were looked at?
Sure. The existing wood utility poles that are there today are essentially, it depends on where you're at, but on the west end, they're anywhere from 1 foot to 2 foot south of the existing edge of the street. And in order to, obviously, if you wanted to incorporate a street or a sidewalk any farther south than that, you'd have to move those poles. And the impacts related to moving those poles includes delays in terms of construction because it's a private utility. XL Energy would need to come in and move those poles. That takes time. And in addition to moving those poles, there are multiple tree removals that would be required both within the right-of-way and also on private property due to the fact that obviously they're overhead. And some of those poles are four-way. They're mounted with wires in 4 directions, all 4 directions. They also serve backyard electrical service to folks. So when you try and move that pole, you're also affecting services in backyards as well.
Did the city look at burying that line to alleviate that whole issue?
It's a consideration, but there's costs involved with that are significant.
I'm just curious how significant is significant.
I don't have a number.
A stretch like that, if you recall in Valley View Road from Kellogg to past Wooddale, we buried those lines, and that was about $220,000 when we did that project. And we actually used some TIF monies from that HRA district down there at the time. So if you're looking at a stretch of 3 to 4 blocks, you're talking $500,000 potentially of dropping those lines underground. And I don't believe that the state aid out of the state aid monies would cover that expense. So that would have to be either absorbed by the city through some fund or else special assessed out.
Okay. As far as just relocating the line, I'm assuming it's Excel, but would they pay for the relocation of?
They would, yeah. But it'd be a fight, but usually we win on those because it's a roadway project.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. I noticed in the feasibility study there were a lot of comments from users of the creek. My understanding is that what happens with the creek itself and the rapids, does the city have any jurisdiction there at all? Because I would think that would just all be the watershed district.
Right now the city's partnering with the watershed district in terms of working with them on the rapids, on either modifying it, removing it, what have you. My understanding is, and we haven't verified this yet, that the grade control structure is the city's. That's at least what the watershed district is telling us, but that's to be determined. So the entire, as mentioned in the feasibility study, that's still up in the air. We're not sure what the watershed district is going to do or wants to do with regards to those rapids.
The watershed district, though, from a staff level, and I don't think they've approved their capital improvement plan, has $500,000 in their plan to do creek improvements, shoreline improvements, similar to what they did south of 54th, from 54th down past 56th Street, where they worked with homeowners to improve the shoreline and such. So they actually have that in for, I believe, the next couple of years to do those improvements, which also includes the main line, potentially the rapids or whatever work needs to be done on those.
If I may, I'd like to check onto that question. I noticed comments, and also you touched on here, the water quality. Would testing be done to address that with new rerouting of the road and what the current water quality is of the creek there?
That's definitely a consideration that gets included as part of the project, yeah. Definitely, especially since we're partnering with the watershed district, we're working hand in hand with them. And that's something that we'd have to meet minimum requirements from a state aid perspective in terms of what type of stormwater is being introduced into the creek. Ultimately, the watershed district is going to review that through our permitting processes.
So Toby, I sent you some questions earlier and you answered them, and thank you for doing that. Do you have that table, that the one on the road width and the lane width?
Yes.
Because this is one of the things I struggled with looking at the information up on the boards, is to understand what exactly is being increased and where. And so on the west section, the existing pavement width, because there's no curb and gutter and no sidewalks, is 29 to 34. When the street is redone, the curb to curb is going to be 28. So the
Correct.
road surface is going to shrink.
Correct.
By 1 to 5 feet. And then, but the developed right-of-way, which is how I think of it, is going to increase by 1 foot. So when people think of the street right now, I see someone nodding. Yeah, that's...
On average,
No.
Yeah, on average, it's 1 foot if in this section where you're 34 feet wide.
Right, where it's 34, so it's 1 to 6 feet, you're right.
Exactly.
So, but in terms of, well, do you have a map that shows us exactly where that's happening? Or do you have a graphic that can...
Where what
show
is happening?
Where the widening is of the developed part of the right-of-way is happening?
I don't have a map that specifically shows where the
Yeah,
impacts are, what the difference is in terms of street widths.
So this is one of the things I struggle with every time we look at feasibility studies, is the engineering is taken to a certain detail level, and that's what is asked for. But it can be hard when we're looking at projects like this and really needing a deeper level of detail in order to communicate. And so, you know, the table helps me some, but I guess that's just a general comment for in the future, is that we really need a deeper level of detail, I think. In terms of the shared lanes, I know one concern that people have is the speed. And the data that was provided to us is that the traffic speeds are, believe it or not, far better than many streets we see. But still, they're, you know, the 85th percentile speed is 30 miles an hour on a street that we want to be friendly for everybody who's using it. And so how exactly do 14-foot lanes address people's concerns about speeding?
The 14-foot lanes are the minimum recommended width for a shared bicycle and vehicle facility through state aid. So as I mentioned, or as is mentioned in the feasibility study, from an overall perspective, like you just talked about, we're decreasing the overall width. So intuitively, that means that you are slowing people down because you have a narrower corridor to travel in. In terms of the perceived safety of a bicyclist in a Sharrow, I can't comment. I'm sure some people feel just fine in them, and if you don't ride in them. I don't know.
I can probably
I'm
add
not
to
sure
that,
if
too,
I
is-
understood
is
the question.
The intent on this is not to have a center line stripe on it, because the volumes are low enough that we don't have to put a dash line or center line stripe. So you'd have the Sharrows, similar to what they have on 44th, although they do have a center line stripe in some areas to, just east of France. But if you go west of France on 44th, we didn't put in the center line stripe. So just not, except for at the stop conditions up by France and up by Brookside. But so the intent is not to have a dash center line except for at the stop conditions. So then you'd just have the Sharrow markers as along the roadway itself. And what we've seen on 44th Street is that really people have a tendency to drive a little more cautiously without having that center line stripe in there. So the intent is really to have it just like 44th, but with the Sharrows marking. And the reason why the Sharrows, we're promoting those, is that because this is part of that TLC Bike Boulevard where we had the federal grant for it, and it's a connection into to Minneapolis, even though Minneapolis hasn't marked the zenith yet, but that's coming as part of their bike plan. So that's from looking at that. The reason why we're recommending the bike facilities is one is to keep the federal dollars from that, and that's in question right now also, and then also just to link it into Minneapolis and down to Wooddale and then down to the south, into southern Edina.
Okay, so I have a few thoughts about that. Right now, 44th has nothing, and I agree with you that that from perception it looks like it is functioning great, but we need the data, and we've asked for it a few times to see if the perception matches with the data. The shared lane markings, I pulled out the NACTO guide today, and shared lane markings aren't considered a bike facility. They have value, but it's not a bike facility, and so it's not at all the same level that would be provided for a cyclist. A dedicated bike lane is a facility. A side path or a trail is a facility. Sharrows aren't. That said, it's probably better than nothing. But one question that came up, I heard some people asking, can't we do 11-foot lanes? And again, this is where the state aid requirements come in. And do you want to explain, if you took out the bike facility, or not, it's not, if you took out the Sharrows, what would be the minimum width you could have on this roadway?
Sure. The minimum lane width for a state aid collector, which 54th is 11 feet. But then state aid also requires a 2-foot curb reaction distance in addition to that 11 feet. So the absolute minimum is 13 feet. So without having maybe not a bike facility, but a Sharrow condition, you could be down to a 13-foot wide section. Right now we're at 14 for one lane.
What is Browndale, or not Browndale, 44th in terms of width?
It varies.
I defer to.
It varies, from the west end to the east end. I believe in the narrow part it was minimum width, so it was 26 feet, I believe.
So they went down to the 13.
Yep. And we were on the west side of Browndale, because there's been a lot of comments made, to mimic basically west of Browndale on 44th Street. And what we were up against there was right away on the north side. And that was one reason why we couldn't expand the roadway to the north to have at least a 2-foot buffer area, if not a nicer grassy boulevard area between the sidewalk itself.
So Wayne, earlier you said that there's not going to be a center stripe. So if it's not a laned roadway, do the minimum lane widths count?
They do, because you have to show it to the state aid folks to meet their requirements. But you're not showing a pavement marking plan. So you're actually showing what the lane widths are to make up that cross-section of the roadway.
I have more questions, but I don't want to dominate it.
Well, let's.
What? Well, no, I want to ask about the idea of a westbound dedicated bike lane, and then eastbound shared lane markings or nothing. Was that looked into?
Again, as I mentioned, we started out with dedicated bike lanes all the way through, and then the more we heard about trying to keep it as narrow as possible, it moved into this Sharrow condition, and we wanted to keep it consistent throughout. And I understand the need and the desire to have a dedicated bike lane westbound of the creek, because you have an uphill climb if you're biking. And that is something that we've looked into. A couple things there. Obviously, we're proposing to raise the bridge, the grade of the bridge vertically, so the amount of slope that's there today will be less when the bridge is raised up. So it won't be as much of an uphill climb as it is today. And In addition, as I just mentioned, the consistency factor was a big thing in terms of not confusing people, especially with, right now, there's dedicated lanes on the west end, and then you move to an advisory section, and we wanted to try and avoid going back and forth between Sharrow to dedicated to Sharrow.
And I also believe that would add 2 feet to it, right? So if you have a 5-foot gutter pan, 11-foot lane, and for the westbound, and then a 14-foot
Right.
eastbound, you'd be adding 2 more feet to what's proposed.
Yeah, it's a minimum 11-foot travel lane and a 5-foot bike lane. So you'd go to a 16-foot lane instead of the 14.
Okay. Well, I'd like to open it up to the residents that are here to make some comments, and then, as Wayne mentioned, we'll take a look at this again next month. But if we could hear, if you could step up to the podium and state your name and address, and please try to keep it 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Steve Timmer, and I'm a stakeholder. I'm actually a 33-year homeowner on 54th Street at Oaklawn, the corner of 54th and Oaklawn. And I've been part of the stakeholder input, as the engineering folks call it, on this street. And we've worked very, very hard about trying to keep the footprint of the project as narrow as possible, and try to avoid creating what I call an ugly urban slash right through the neighborhood. And a lot of the things that are happening here are as a result of some of the agitation, if you will, that we've done. Yesterday, I distributed a document that was a collaborative one prepared by some of the neighbors, mostly on the west side of the street, but a couple of people on the east as well, called the Neighbors 54th Street Principles and Plan. And I wanted that distributed to all of you, and I assume you got it. And I'd like that to be entered as part of the record in the proceedings tonight, if I may. Last night was the first time we really had a chance to look at kind of the final plan that was presented here tonight. And one of the things we noticed, it had 14-foot lanes. And the last one that they proposed had 13.5-foot lanes. And we were like, well, what's this? And pressed for a reason, we were given one by the engineering department this morning, an 8-digit reason, actually. And you may want to write this down, because it answers some questions that Commissioner Genovi had as well. And that is, it's MnDOT Rule 8820-9941. And it says basically for the reconstruction of a state aid road, and where you have a bike facility included, and the design speeds are 30 miles an hour or under, and you have and I'm getting laryngitis, I apologize. And your traffic count is, I think it's 2,000 to 5,000. You have to have a 14-foot, what's called wide-out lane, or you have to have a bike lane. So that's where that number came from. But it came as a surprise to us, and frankly, I think it came as a surprise to engineering too, because they didn't have it in the earlier one. But it doesn't. That fact alone does not erase the reasons that we want the street to be narrower, and I'll lay those out just a little bit. And the fact is that it is possible under MnDOT rules to ask for a variance, which is fairly commonly done to accommodate the conditions on the street. And that's what we're going to ask you to ask the city to do, is get a variance. Now, here's among the reasons I think we need to do that.
Your 3 minutes is up, so just if you could wrap it up, please.
I can't talk very fast right now. Well, I will send you all a note. There are several reasons why you can vary from 14-foot And several of them apply and deal with it, are in the thing that I sent to the county, or sent around yesterday. We love the neighborhood. We want to keep it the way it is. We don't want to not only not remove trees, we don't want to kill them, which a wider footprint might do, especially the old majestic oak trees. And so with that, I'll let some of my other neighbors talk. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'm Mark Eppel. I live at 5336 Kellogg. I'm at the northwest corner of 54th and Kellogg, so I'm right one of the stakeholders. So one of the questions that I had, and I just wanted some clarification from the engineers, was just exactly how these lane widths are measured. So we look at the scheme that is proposed to us, and it has center line to the face of the curb at 14 feet. However, when I do some digging, I go to MnDOT to see how they measure their lane widths. They're measuring it to the edge of the gutter. So that potentially can be a surprise when it comes time to actually do the construction, adding another 3 feet. And the reason why I'm concerned is that I'm at the north side of the street. And it was brought up earlier just in terms of there's a lack of detail showing exactly what these impacts are showing. I understand the whole utility pole and not needing to move that. I totally agree with that, which just points to the urgency to really get this figured out now, try to keep it as narrow as possible, because at our not at last night's meeting, but the previous meeting, we were showing the scope of the project, and it was really heavily biased to the north side. I have 2 very mature trees. I'm very concerned that any digging near is just maybe it's not gonna knock it down, but in 2-3 years, I'd be willing to bet that they'd be coming down. So I guess I just would like to know exactly how those measurements are conducted, and to make sure that engineering understands what MnDOT is requiring of them, which also leads to another question. I don't know if he can address that so I don't lose my train of thought, but I mean, they kind of tie with each other in terms of just the width and how it really affects the west side.
I don't think they can make comments directly, but I mean, they'll certainly take notes and make sure that, you know, we're.
Well, another part, I mean, and I don't know who in engineering would be able to answer, but in terms of the construction of a road, and if they build curbs, how close can they actually get to a utility pole? Are they able to build it right up to it? Do they need 2 feet clearance? That's not clear when they're showing our plans. Because right now I know exactly where my property stake is and how far it is to the utility pole. It's 47.5 feet. So if you do the math, basically 30 feet away and another 17.5 feet is the center point of what this project is, what they're proposing for the 35. So it's very important that all of us, at least on the west side, we came into agreement that we really want to keep this project centered on the right-of-way. We don't want to have to shift it and burden the north side any more than the south side. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Eppel.
They'll laugh at me because I just can't sit. I just always have to get up here. Hi, thank you for letting us come today. I am Terry Whaley, and my husband and I live at 5337 Wooddale. I'm the White House on the northeast corner. And I got involved in this, I guess, when we did the Wooddale project. which I think many of us, most all of us, found to be somewhat of a debacle. And there wasn't all the input, and then we had to go backwards on it. And listening to you, is it Miss Genovi? I'm sorry if I say that correctly. It was interesting to listen to things you said, whether it be about sidewalk width or whatever. I mean, I'm all for pedestrians. There's not one of us. I mean, all the public and the private schools drop off on 54th. I've raised 4 children in this school, in the public school district. I work in the public schools. I think a sidewalk's important, and all of us do, but we also need to think of the width. That'll be right in my street. I'm happy to have it on my side and on my yard, but if you have a 1-foot rumble strip and a 4-foot sidewalk, we still fall within those 5-foot guidelines. When we keep talking about stakeholders, I think what was upsetting to a lot of us in August when we had the first meetings at the church is that the stakeholders, which we question that term, at least 25 to 50% of the people at every table I went to were not Edina residents. That's what caused, I think, a lot of fear and why we really motivated and got together. It's not that I don't want people to enjoy the creek or that people aren't going to bike, but the things that make Edina great are the homeowners, the people that live there, that remodel their homes, that take care of them, that send their kids to the school here. We have the most invested for our quality of life, for my home value. And my husband and I have put a lot in. And when we remodeled, we went to every neighbor and talked to them. We showed them everything we were doing. We designed from the outside in. We wanted it to look the best from the outside so everybody can enjoy it, not just our own little personal world. So when we're doing this, I hope we think of the homeowners, number one, not the bikers, not even the people at the bus stop. In all the years, in the 18 years I've been at my house, I can't count 5 people that have been at my bus stop. We want to make landing pads, bike rails. I know we've taken a lot of those elements out, but there's a point of ridiculousness when we haven't, for all these years, even focused on the school buses that drop off, that are the kids that live here in Edina. So I guess my proposal, Mark Eppel is my neighbor, all of us have been in agreement. And one part that's been so wonderful about this process is how well I've gotten to know everybody and how wonderful everyone's been and how on the same page we've been. So I hope you really do always ask all the homeowners and get those notes out and don't make decisions on what's nice maybe for you for biking or for you personally for walking, for what's best for the people whose yards you're taking, who people have planted and lived there for 30, 40, 50 plus years, for their driveways, their retaining walls. That's their home. I hope you think of them first. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jean Caldwell. I live at 5401 Oaklawn Avenue, right on the corner of 54th and Oaklawn. And I first want to thank the people who put together the plan tonight because they did listen to us, which was great. There are still some issues that we're not happy with that we hope we can come to a better compromise about, like the rumble strip for the curbing, because it just adds more concrete to our neighborhood. But the one thing that I really want you all to consider when you look at this project overall is the fact that our homes were built in the 30s and 40s, and they're very close to the road. So it's very different from 44th Street, which I see it keeps getting compared to. It's great what they've done there, but those homes are built very far away from the center strip of the road. So that is one big consideration that I hope you take into account when you look at that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John Crabtree, owner and resident at 5408 Oaklawn Avenue, so I live 3 houses below, south of 54th Street. Got one brief comment I'd like to make about the bridge and the proposed underpass, which I now realize is there, or the walkway under it. I would just like somebody at some stage to get a comment from the Edina Police Department, really with a view that that's maybe a place where people could loiter, possibly with intent, and people could essentially hide. What I really want to talk about though tonight, and you've heard this time and time again from the neighborhood, is this whole issue of street width. When we go right back to the beginning, I think some of us as neighbors would like to have seen parking on the street, but when we really understood what it meant, that all just sort of disappeared. In thinking about this, I want to go back to the presentation that Chair Nelson gave to the City Council on living streets back in, I think it was August the 20th. And to me, there were 4 points which came out of that presentation. One, streets cost the city money to both maintain and build. Point two was significant concern about runoff from the streets, the whole environmental issue. Two things which came out of the quality of life survey. One is people are concerned about speeding in Edina, and the second thing is, the second point on quality of life was that people run stop signs. We can't do anything, I don't think, with this scheme very much about stopping people running stop signs, but the other three things all suggest to me that you want to try and keep the roadways as narrow as possible. Saves money, reduces runoff, and all the studies seem to show that it actually then reduces traffic speed. So if we then go to the lane proposal that we now have before us with the sharrows and 14 feet, I would very much like some serious consideration to be done as to whatever could be done to possibly reduce that further. You know, understanding there are some issues around consistency, but I also believe that lane width still continues to be an issue. And I also, finally, I'd like to say, Commissioner Janaway, please keep asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you everybody for taking their time to be here tonight. My name is John Adams. I live at 5336 Halifax Avenue South. So that's directly on the corner of West 54th and Halifax Avenue South. And we own approximately 230 feet adjacent to West 54th and are directly across the street from the church. Looking at these plans kind of for the first time, I want to first off state we appreciate that you guys are starting to come around to a lot of the neighborhood's feedback. While it would appear east of the creek that the road width has narrowed by about a foot, it would also appear that the driving lanes have become 18 feet sharrow and 14 feet sharrow as opposed to what we have in place right now, which are two 8-foot parking space or designated parking lanes and then two 14-foot sharrows. So that's, from my standpoint, that is a huge concern. We look at the aggregate speed on West 54th, and I think we stated that was around 30 miles per hour. I think if you really calculated the data east of the creek versus the data west of the creek, which feels very neighborhood appropriate and very walkable, versus east of the creek, which, you know, feels like a speedway. I mean, buses peak at 45 miles an hour. Cars absolutely fly from France downwards to the creek. And I think if you measured that section of West 54th, you would find that the traffic speeds are well beyond 35, 40, even 50 at times. And designating one sharrow at 18 feet and another at 14, at a glance, I think that would be devastating to myself, all the people who live adjacent, who own property adjacent to West 54th, and all the families that are walking from not only Halifax Avenue South to try to get to Arden Park, but all the families walking from Halifax Avenue Lane, all the church members that are coming and going throughout events during the week. So while at a glance it may look like that road has narrowed, I think what we're hoping for is, if they're going to eliminate that parking, is some sort of consistency with what's happening west of the creek. So I'm kind of rallying behind the people west of the creek because I feel like they want to maintain a feel that's consistent with what they have today, and that's appropriate for all the families that walk in the neighborhood. And from my standpoint, and I've only been living in the neighborhood for about a year now, I think I want what they have, and we all kind of have this consistent vision, and to some extent we want to be very respectful to the church on Sundays so that they can have their parking as well. But I guess I'm not willing to necessarily support compromising that designated parking if it's just going to make, West 54th in front of my house an absolute freeway, which I think it kind of borderline kind of is today. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John.
Good evening. You've been sitting here for a couple of hours, so I'm sure you're pretty tired, but we certainly do appreciate you taking the time to listen to the public's feedback. My name is Kevin Green, and I live at 5400 Kellogg Avenue. And I'm a recent new member of the neighborhood. A lot of these members have been living here for over 20 years. My wife and I just moved here from Cincinnati just last December. And there were 3 reasons why we moved to the neighborhood. The first one is safety. Second one is character of the neighborhood. And the third one is the overall opportunity to have rising property values. And as we consider this project, I think what you're hearing is a lot more questions about the details than perhaps what we have. And what I would like all of us to consider is additional time, additional facts, additional information so we truly can understand the details and the implications to each one of our property values before moving forward. As you think about safety, the width of the street certainly is concerning to me, just because of the higher speeds of the vehicles that could have an impact on that. As you think about the overall character, one of the big reasons why we bought in that neighborhood is because of the unique, narrower streets, the old trees and structures of the houses. And we don't want to lose any of that for bike lanes or parking. And then as we think about rising property values, you've heard about the opportunity to go from taking 8 trees down to 0, which is really great progress and a testament to what has been done over the past several months. And I would think that the neighborhood is pleased with the progress, but we're still far from satisfied. So I would urge you all to consider additional details, additional facts, so that we can understand with greater clarity of what the true impact is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, members of the commission. Thank you for taking my comments. My name is Ed Ross, and I live at 4015 West 54th Street. I'm a stakeholder on the east side of this project, and I'm on the south side of 54th at the intersection of Halifax, and John Adams is my neighbor. And I generally support his comments. Looking at the plan with removing parking on one side and creating the 18-foot lane on the north side, I guess, to be frank, I don't think that makes any sense. I support parking on both sides to keep the street narrow and to provide use. There is a church event tonight, and at 6:40 there was parking on both sides of the street, and it was being fully utilized. It isn't just on Sundays. The only thing that's not there most of the time is bike traffic, and I think we're providing a lot of dedicated resources for bike traffic that just isn't there. I'm not against biking. I biked quite a bit as a kid. I like to bike, but to dedicate these scarce resources for this biking, I just don't really understand too much. So anyways, I'd like to keep it narrow, and I generally support everything that John said. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all for showing up. It was very enlightening. It's good to hear comments from the community directly like this. We don't often get this many people show up at our meetings, so it's very nice to hear that and have that opportunity. We are going to look at this again next month, it sounds like.
Could we answer those 2 questions that we had from one of the first speakers?
Sure.
I was going to have Toby answer about how they measure the lanes. I think that's important that people understand that. And then how close can we get to a utility pole? I believe is the 2 questions.
Sure. The first question about how do they measure the lanes, the lanes are measured to the face of the curb. They consider this 14-foot lane a wide outside lane. That's what MnDOT state aid determines this type of a facility or this type of a situation when you are introducing a lane that shares vehicles and bicycles together. The question regarding how close to the utility pole can you build from the street side face of the pole to the face of the curb, minimum is 2 foot clear zone between that.
Okay, thank you. That's great. All right, are there further comments from the commissioners?
Do we have, this is a big report, but I didn't see it, an existing conditions and a proposed conditions that surveys out everything from poles to, what, I know this is pre-design, but it seems like this has, we're talking about centering right away, and I have no idea where this thing falls.
For this level of a study, we actually don't get into the final design, is what you're sort of asking for, is putting that on the survey itself. We have the survey, and based off of the survey points is that they know where this will fall into it, but we don't have those down to those types of graphics itself. So it's that would become the next step basically after the feasibility. What I'm hearing from some of the members tonight is that in the future is maybe we should be dialing this in a little bit more. Obviously, that brings up your costs for feasibility. So, and there's always potential if you don't go forward with it, you lose out on those costs. So this is pretty much industry standard the way that this has been approached.
Yeah, and I get that. I think just this case is quite unique, dealing with a bridge, dealing with topo, dealing with utility poles, I just had my street done this year, and there's none of these issues really. So I think for all of our sake, we just need an existing conditions map and a proposed right-of-way laid in there so we can see what we're dealing with from a. Otherwise, I'm hearing everyone's concerns, but I have no idea how to even respond to them from what I'm looking at. So I guess that'd be my one point. And then just as a general comment, I think we should consider moving it. We should look at the fact if these utility poles are causing issues, there may be one or two that could be moved that alleviate a lot of concerns as far as where that right-of-way falls. So I think that's within our bounds to ask Excel to move that if it makes the whole project better. So that's my comments overall.
We don't know where to begin. I want to echo Nathan's comment, which kind of echoed mine, and that is that I think in some projects, especially when we're adding facilities and we're changing things, so we need to have more detail, and I understand the cost, but I haven't seen a road project not go through in the time period I've paid attention. So, I think the costs are recovered. So that's all I'm going to say right now. They can bring up an aerial map, if that would help you.
That would be helpful, but I think in this case, we're talking about 6 inches. Just I think for all of our sake, we're going to need some sort of existing conditions map. So.
And just to get back to one of the questions about speed on the east side, we do have a report here, Appendix G, where it talks about the crash data and speed. It's listed at 26.5, and that's fairly close to France Avenue. So and that's in a westbound reading, it looks like. Is that correct? So just after the rounding the corner or coming across France.
Which page were you on there?
Oh, it's Appendix G, I guess the first page.
What we got in our packet, we had 2012 speed and volume data in detail, and then on this sheet we have just one reference to 2013 data. So I'm curious if there is more detailed 2013 data, and also I wish I would have pulled out the bike and pedestrian video counts from more than a year ago, but that would be helpful here because one thing that we have learned is that people often say nobody bikes on my road, and then the video cameras put up, and there are literally, hundreds of people biking, and it's, so, it would be helpful to have that kind of video data to support. I see heads shaking no, but.
I did my own counts.
Yeah, I know, but you're not out there 24 hours a day, and the video camera is. So, and I think that because of the current facility on there right now, some level of study was required, so those counts exist, and I'd be really curious to see, I think that when we're talking about bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles, we should be counting all of them and including that data.
We can include that, because we have that information, absolutely.
All right, other questions, comments?
Just a couple of comments. I really appreciate folks coming and sharing their feedback, especially on this whole process, because this was something new that the city hasn't done before, and it's interesting to hear what your experience was like throughout this whole engagement process. I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that, not only do we need the details on exactly what's being proposed, but also that it's really, really important to ensure that what gets designed is what gets built. That's just as important as knowing what's proposed. So that's part of what I'm hearing folks say too. And then to the point of the Living Streets policy, the gentleman that acknowledged kind of 4 points of what he heard in the Living Streets presentation, I'm very pleased that that was your takeaway, because that is a big part of the Living Streets policy, obviously, is to address the quality of our waterways in the city and to address traffic calming, because people don't want cars speeding through their neighborhoods. So those are two big pieces, but one piece that was not mentioned was an acknowledgement on the part of the city through passing the Living Streets policy that people are moving about their communities in different ways and that our patterns in transportation will continue to change over the next coming decades, not only for folks that live in the city now, but for future potential homeowners in the city. And we want to make sure that we consider the needs of all users and balance that with things like roadway width and facilities. So I just wanted to make sure that that was a takeaway from the interpretation of the Living Streets policy as well.
I do have one question. It's related to the 1 foot rumble strip, as some people call it. Courtney, you might actually know some of this. The ADA, ADA is a consideration. One benefit of that rumble strip is not only as a detection, but also as a place for signs that are necessary, that you have to post there so that the sign pole isn't in the path of the people using the sidewalk. And so if you shrink the sidewalk, then you have the sign pole in the usable space. And I don't know at what point that becomes an ADA issue.
I believe that at 1 foot, we wouldn't be able to put a signpost in the rumble strip. I'll have to double check on that, but I believe you need a minimum of 2 feet, because typically you have a 24-inch sign on it. So the signs would still be on the outside. The reason why we recommend what I call a rumble strip or a buffer strip on that is that when you can't fit in a boulevard-style sidewalk and you're forced to put it close to the curb, is that you have a 6-inch drop-off. In the ADA regulations, they don't require that, but they recommend that you don't put a sidewalk right up against any drop-offs like that. So that's the reason being. And then the other reason being for the 5 foot, because we've heard a lot of folks say, we'll make it a 4 foot walk. The equipment that we have to maintain the sidewalks is 60 inches, the trackless equipment that Public Works use to maintain these sidewalks, and they'd be maintained by Public Works. And they don't make equipment that's narrower unless you go down to a snowblower that you're physically just walking behind to maintain it. So that's the reason why we've gone to 5 foot. And you brought up the fact earlier of just walking down a sidewalk. It's nicer to be 5 foot or even 6 foot in some cases, depending upon the pedestrian traffic that you have on it. But from a maintenance point of view, that's why we're recommending 5-foot minimum.
It seems over the years that that when we look at projects, street widths fall into a range of 28 to 32 feet. Those are numbers that come into my mind. What typically is the minimum street that you construct?
Our typical standard on local streets is 27-foot face-to-face for local streets.
Okay, so any other questions on this? All right, we'll bring it back next month, and it sounds like there's a little bit more input we can get as far as counts and bicycle traffic and speeds and
right, and we'll
different things.
discuss the mapping and things and see how much they can do in that period of time. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, and again, thank you everybody for showing up and showing your concern and helping us through this. This is a great process. Thank you. Excuse me, move on to item 6F. The Traffic Safety Committee report of October 8th was included in the packet. Does everybody have that? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious how we measure pedestrian crossings.
So which item are you referring to?
I'm sorry, it's under B1.
We set up a camera.
So it's
and we leave it up for battery lasts about 30 hours, and then we bring that back in the office and run those counts.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question on, I guess on 1A, just was the school, I mean, it seems like this is an area right next to the Highland School, and obviously with parking apparently on both sides of the road there, it'd be difficult for buses to get through there too. Was the school contacted in any way, or what's our relationship with the transportation department at the schools?
The school wasn't contacted in this case. I've actually had another call this week from another resident with the same exact concern that of buses and vehicles being able to get through that turn, especially in the morning rush when kids are being dropped off at school. So we didn't contact the school in this case, but we did go out and take some measurements and take a look at that tight curve, and that's where our recommendations came from.
I just had one comment. I didn't quite hear everything you said, Nathan. Did you ask what time of day do they do the ped counts? That's how they did it. Oh, how? Because on section C1, where they're asking for a crosswalk 1 block up from where we've already talked about, they're on 54th and Xerxes. This is where it says there's only 12 pedestrians recorded crossing. This is a natural cycle walking path I take, and so do many people in the neighborhood, where we cross down that gravel road, down that little sidewalk that's created by the neighbors. It's a natural cycle to cross over to the other side of the creek to Minneapolis side. So I found it interesting. It was only 12 people.
Yeah, that was the maximum 2-hour period.
Yeah.
was 12 that we.
So do they do a whole ped count, different times of the day, different days of the week? Because I mean, if it's like
We typically, and I don't have it with me what day
Yeah.
we did this count, but we typically do our counts on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And we do run the camera for greater than 24 hours, as long as we have battery. And
Can
then
we try it for the weekend, where maybe you'd have higher walking counts? Or
We could. We've done that in one case, in one location at Creek Valley Road and Nordic Circle, where we had a good deal of soccer traffic on a Saturday. So we set the camera up on a Friday night. And interestingly enough, the most traffic came when the school let out on Friday afternoon. But we do it on weekends as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Jennifer?
On section B1, it's a denial of a requested crosswalk. And I can understand why you denied it here, but my memory, and I meant to look this up and I didn't, but my memory is the NEATS called for marked crosswalks at that whole intersection of Sunnyside and Grimes, which is just a half block to the south. So the request was for one at 45th in Grimes, and then Sunnyside in Grimes is like a half block to the south. And one of the confusing things is there are two curb cuts just north of the Sunnyside and Grimes, on Grimes, just north of Sunnyside, that don't line up with the intersection. And so if you cross there, and I know I've almost been hit before, something just needs to be done. And in the Northeast Edina Transportation Study, the approved recommendations, I guess, that the council approved, I believe they included crosswalks at that intersection. So it'd be good if that could be looked at, I think.
Okay.
And then I have a question about D2. And I'm curious what you're thinking. I brought this up in a different thing because I know there is a problem with that right turn lane, I think, from Tracy on to Vernon. And so, I thought, one option, get rid of the right turn lane, just have people queue. But what is this bump out going to look like?
It's going to look like the bump outs that are on Tracy that are
How far
located
back
south of
from the
there.
intersection will it be? It is?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. I'll go there and look at it. Okay. And then my last little minor tiny comment is the bump outs on Xerxes. It looks like one of them, there's a Metro Transit bus stop right at it. I don't know. I'm sure they caught that one, but
Yes, they did, by 61st Street.
yeah. That's all.
Just to clarify on that point, on Xerxes, where the bump outs are located or to be located when it gets, Hennepin County repaves that road, the no parking is going to be just at those locations where the bump outs occur, and then the 170 feet from the crosstown. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. Basically, that 170 feet covers the area south of the southernmost bump outs.
Yes.
Just to comment on the bump outs, I think we could actually make them larger and make it more of a aesthetically pleasing, and still have enough plenty of parking. But they make such a big difference when you have a decent stretch of green in that along the right of way versus just a very short section. So if there's even especially the one in the center could be extended and done in such a way that everyone still has parking within a relatively short distance. I think it might be a positive.
On that, what you're seeing there is just temporary for the winter months until they do the mill and overlay next year.
Okay.
And through January, February, staff is going to need to work with the residents to say, are these working, and then formulate a plan for permanent bump outs that would probably are going to be bioswales because of the drainage there. The drainage is a big issue. And what you're seeing left up by 60th Street, though, the temporary bump outs are held a little bit to the south, and our thoughts is move them up closer so they start right at the intersection itself. And that's going to lend itself to the sidewalk. If you recall, we did a feasibility for a sidewalk to the north from 60th up to 56th Street. And if we kept it with the current west curb line in place, it became a $500,000 sidewalk. But if you look at where these bump outs are, it's going to lend itself to moving that curb line to the east, so then you can fit in a boulevard and a sidewalk and not have to go up in those residents' front yards, and take parking away from that area, but bring it all the way up to 56th Street. So what they're proposing, I can see as a huge plus to the side, putting that sidewalk in and kind of beautifying the roadway going to the north also. And at that time, I think the staff can work with the residents to extend those bump outs and, like you say, get more green into that area.
Yeah, I think it'll look great when it's done.
I have a comment about C2, and I'll try to make sense of all of my thoughts. I completely understand where this requester is coming from, because I have been in the 50th and France area doing my shopping, walking around, and almost been hit by bicyclists on the sidewalk, usually kids. So I understand that it's unsafe for pedestrians and unsafe in many cases, in this case in particular, for this child riding a bike who was hit by an opened restaurant door. My concern and sort of my challenge with posting no bicycling or please walk your bike, I think that would be my preference in this case, and I know it's differed for, I don't know, for
to our next committee meeting, yeah.
So we know about the parking issues in 50th and France, and I think the last thing anybody wants to do is discourage people from taking other modes to the district, particularly those that live nearby when they actually have the ability to get there some other way other than driving their car and contributing to the parking problem. But there are no facilities for bicyclists, nor would we, right now, I wouldn't advise anybody to bike on the street in the 50th and France area. It's just crazy congested and, it just doesn't work, especially for kids. So I just think we need to be really, really careful in the language that we use on the signage, that we don't, don't discourage taking other modes to the area. And I think also ask council to consider what are the potential remedies for addressing the need for better bicycling facilities in the 50th and France area. I know it's a really challenging area, but this just highlights the need for the potential conflicts that are created when we don't have a good system for all the modes, and then we end up having injuries. So that's what I'll say about that. I don't know if maybe next month we consider an advisory communication or something that sort of augments whatever the recommendation is, but I just think it's a complicated issue. It's far more complicated than just putting signs up. That's what I want to say.
Well, and can I piggyback on that? I would agree with Catherine. I think in this one, if I'm remembering right, there was outdoor seating for the restaurant.
Yes.
And even though there was the necessary 8 feet or something between the door or the building and the seating, we know how busy 50th and France can be, especially on a nice weekend day. And so I think we have to weigh things. I mean, we all know that state law doesn't allow biking in a business district. So, that's not really all the city would be doing is posting what the law is. But we have to, understanding what you said, we have to weigh things. And we certainly want families out, biking, walking, that kind of thing. So I would agree. And I sent Mark a picture of a pavement inset that says dismount zone. And it shows like a bike and a skateboard. And it's a little bit gentler than no biking.
Okay, anything else? Or I'm looking for a motion to forward this on to council. All right, is there a second? Don, motion by Nathan and second by Don. Hearing no further comment, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll jump into the updates. Number 6G, student member. This is a time that you have an opportunity to. Kara did mention she might leave early, so I told her it was fine. You came in a little later, so I didn't get a chance to give you the same option, but certainly if you need to ever leave for class reasons or anything, you can certainly do that. But do you have any comments or things you'd like to bring up? Yeah, just hit the green button there.
No comments or updates.
All right, thank you. Edina Bank Task Force, minutes of September 12. Was those in there?
No, I didn't see them.
Okay, I didn't either.
Oh, well. And the minutes of October could have been distributed to, we've kind of reorganized. We passed bylaws. We standardized our members. We formed subcommittees. And we have 4 openings right now, so if you know anybody who wants to be a BTF member, we have 4 openings. And our subcommittee areas are infrastructure, bike-friendly community, active routes to school, and education and outreach. And those are going to be open to anybody who wants to participate.
So has the status with the city been clarified then?
Mark and I are talking about it, and the consensus at the meeting is that the group is not interested in being a working group of the ETC, and that that as a kind of, we're beginning to understand that we are seen as a separate organization, and so that we're seeking to formalize our relationship with the city in some kind of not very complicated document.
Is that the end of your report? All right, thank you. The Living Streets Working Group. I don't really have anything prepared. We're continuing to meet. When's our next meeting? I don't even have that.
Next meeting is on November 6th.
Okay.
And then we'll be going over the results of the workshop exercise that was conducted by Andrea from Feed the Dog at the last meeting, and beginning to talk about future steps in terms of crafting the report. I can update now regarding the photo shoot that we're going to be doing here. We have, I believe we have a photographer on board, and what we want to do is start to get some photographs in town with some volunteers, some families, multi-generational groups of folks out on some of our streets while they still have colors on the leaves. And so that's actually happening next week, and we've actually, I think Courtney and Paul, I sent out an email to our Living Streets Advisory Group to see if they have any volunteers for that. So we're looking at doing that next week, next Thursday, actually.
While we go trick-or-treating, right?
That's right.
Okay.
In costume.
Great. Well, thanks. Thanks for the update there. Communications Committee, is there any update?
We don't have any updates, but since you ask for one every time, I just want to clarify that, we're not, as a committee, we don't have any work in progress. I think we are here to respond, for example, to the needs of a revised survey. We'd be happy, I think, to take a look at that. Or when we come up with what we see as some area where we might help, then we initiate something. So we don't have anything at the moment, but it doesn't mean that we might not next month, so keep asking.
All right, thank you. And that's it with 6G. Moving on to number 7, correspondence and petitions. Was there any, we had a lot of correspondence this time, but it's all been covered now, I think, on the previous things. Chair and Commission member comments. We'll just go down the line, starting with Emily, and if you don't have anything, say just pass. Otherwise, let us know what your thoughts are.
One very short comment about my reconstruction project. I've been testing the city engineering staff to see if I could finally stump them on a question, and I thought I had them. They had removed the corner pin of my lot for the reconstruction project. And I went to look for it because we're looking at installing a fence, and I emailed the city staff, and sure enough, they had already planned to reinstall it. So I was quite impressed that the city staff had thought of a lot of the little details that do come into play of these projects. So it's I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, I just have a couple things. I'll try to keep it brief, but I noticed on the Birchcrest B project that we talked about today, they've replaced, or your plan is to replace some of the concrete roadway with bituminous. And we really haven't done a whole lot of work with the concrete streets throughout Edina, and there's, I don't know how many miles, but there's a fair amount of it down in, at least in my neighborhood, I know, and in various segments. So I'm just wondering, is that the plan going forward, or are you still devising a plan of how to redo the concrete streets, as those are not shown in the 10, 12 years that we have out on the plan for the rest of the roadways?
We have about 50 miles of concrete streets out of the 230 miles that we have, and And we haven't devised an actual plan like we have on the asphalt streets for a roadway reconstruction or update of the concrete streets. So we're just attacking those as they come up. If they're adjacent to a neighborhood or part of a neighborhood that has asphalt streets, we're looking at the concrete streets and say, do they need to be replaced? In that case, that they needed to be replaced, so we're recommend the asphalt streets. Typically, people want asphalt over concrete just because of the noise factor. Because if you're driving down a concrete street at the construction joints, and over time they get larger, so you have that thump 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 as that kind of reverberates through your house and things like that. So every place that we've actually replaced a concrete street with asphalt, people love it. So that's probably what will happen in the future, but we don't have an actual plan in place yet.
Okay. And the other question kind of pertains to Tom Miller's presentation from earlier in the night here, the safety in the park presentation. Would it be appropriate for this commission to ask of the council to do some kind of pass some kind of a statement saying that the city is against the southern arm focus on the railroad, or do we want to bring that, maybe put that on next month's agenda?
You could probably put on next month's agenda. I think it would be up to you folks to make that decision. From a staff level, I don't have enough information in the engineering area about that southern arm of if it's good or bad or whatever for the city of Edina. Mm-hmm. I know there's been a huge issue with the trains going by this summer. Right. With the whistle blowing, and the only way that you can stop the whistles from blowing is to put in at crossing arms and medians, and then declare a whistle ban, which becomes very, very expensive. But
would that be on the city to do that, or could we request that of the railroad?
It'd be on the city to do that. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it has been very noticeable that the amount of trips has increased, and the time of day has gotten much later, 11:30, midnight, kind of middle of the night times when it's blowing. So
right.
That's all I have.
I do have a couple items. Just wanted to provide some positive feedback of entering and exiting out of the New Barley's interchange there onto France. It's fabulous now. You can actually get out to France versus the side road there. It's impossible to take a left and a right to France from previous. So.
Great.
Second is that there's been some changes on the proposal and what's going to happen here with Prism Express expanding into Edina and all the work that I did. I just transitioned out of Prism Express this week and took a new position that was created over at DARTS, which is another larger nonprofit agency that serves a lot more seniors and disabled transportation. And it kind of is working on this whole livable streets project on a county level. I'm a mobility manager and creating a toolkit for that. But unfortunately, I had to cancel our grant application with the city's Human Services grant because I can't take it forward. And I also canceled the other portion with Met Council because after I put my notice in, Prism Express chose to close down. So we kind of have to maybe talk about what we want to do, if there's a different charge you'd like me to bring the group back up to look at different options. So.
Yeah, I think if Sharon, you could make a note to put that on topic on the agenda for next month, that would be good. Thank you.
All right. Well, Courtney had a nice thing to say about the Byerly's exit, and I want to say something that's maybe, this is probably more, directed to the county. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it. I haven't even been there for the last 2 days, but I got caught like 3 times coming north on France and not knowing I needed to merge until that last minute, probably because the sign that warns you to merge is 3 lanes, it's on the outside lane, and if you got trucks and vehicles, you don't see it, and then you forget, and then there's right there at Gallagher, there was a problem. So I don't know if there's any way to put because we'll be working on that, the different intersections and these kinds of things could keep coming up. If there's any way to use the median as well, because I think it is hard to see sort of like merge ahead signs that are 3 lanes to the outside. The other, related to the other side of the Byerly's project, I was coming west from Target, and I could have sworn I saw a sign that said this road is closing for construction, but it never did it?
It actually did. I think it was.
Was it just a day or two?
This last Sunday night or the Sunday before. Overnight, they
Oh.
closed it to do a water connection.
Okay, I thought it was
Yep.
going to be more of a longer, week or something, so I didn't know that, okay. That's all I have.
Just a follow-up on that. When is that road reconstruction happening on the north side of where the Byerly's is? Is that going to be next spring?
That'll be next summer, 2014 project also, yep.
I just wanted to ask, and perhaps I should have checked in with my communications committee colleagues before I ask this question, but I'm just reflecting on how many of the issues that come in around, and the concerns that were voiced by neighbors here today, and around sort of right-of-way and in the traffic safety report, sight lines with vegetation, and I'm recalling back to some recommendations that I believe we put forward from the communications committee around modifications that we could make to the city's website so that there was very clear and easily accessed information if homeowners are going to, consider planting, and that they have some guidelines to follow and know what the rules are, that they don't have to sort of dig through, city ordinances and rules and things, that, just clear user-friendly information about right-of-way and sightlines and things like that. And I thought we'd made some recommendations around modifying the city's website. I just wanted to inquire as to where that is, or whether any of those changes have been considered. And that's it from me.
We'd have to go back and look at that and get back to you on that, give you an update of that communications. I wasn't prepared tonight to give you an update of it.
And perhaps we can find it and resend it.
But we can find it.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
absolutely. If we can't, we'll let you know.
just to make it easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And on to number 9, staff comments. Wayne and Mark?
Let Mark go first here.
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick regarding projects. The Metro Boulevard sidewalk, that's on the west side of Metro Boulevard, just south of Public Works. Concrete work will be done this week and restoration next week. So that project basically was about 3 or 4 weeks from start to finish, if all goes well. Then that will be complete. Vernon Avenue Mill and Overlay. As many of you, if not all of you, probably have noticed, we still have no pavement markings or signage for the bike lanes. And as of today, I've been in touch with the county, and they have crews out there doing it. It's obviously getting cold. They still hope to get to it this fall. But in talking with Wayne, we may need to be prepared for it not to get done until next spring. I haven't communicated that back to the county yet, but they're still hoping to get to it. They just didn't have a schedule for me. An update regarding the traffic coordinator position. As you know, Byron left the position about 2 months ago. We interviewed 7 candidates last week to fill the position and extended an offer this week, and it was accepted today, and we have a new traffic safety coordinator starting on November 4th. So we're all excited about that. And, quickly, on the 2014 work plan, I think we had added the educational safety campaign, and I was told yesterday by Bloomington Public Health that the SHIP 3 funds were approved. They didn't get the maximum amount, but there is funding in that program for us to look at getting that educational safety campaign going. So I'll keep you up to date on that. I'm not sure what that amount is, but that was good news. And yesterday I received a letter from Councilmember Bennett regarding the Quasquincentennial that's coming up and Founders Day, and she asked that I circulate this, so I'm going to pass this out. It's an invitation to the Founders Day events on December 12th. And that's all I have. Thanks.
I'm glad Mark said that, what that was, because I still cannot say that. Just a couple of things that I have is that you mentioned the France Avenue project, is that we're on schedule for the bid date of November 20th, so that's gone through the system over at MnDOT, and the shutdown didn't delay us at all because that was a different type of funding. So they stayed open through the shutdown over there. Hazelton Road will be bid out on the same date with the roundabout. And then our neighborhood projects are coming to an end, and our final pavement is actually going, the workhorse is going up, down up on the Mendelson neighborhood tomorrow. And then next week will be the Normandale neighborhood. We'll have the final pavement put down also. Also wanted to announce that Mark Nolan is going to be your liaison from here on out. So direct anything to Mark itself. And I like the word that Courtney used, is transitioning, and I'm going to be transitioning out of the city, and next Thursday is my last day. So thank you for the time I spent with you guys. It's been a pleasure, and like I say, it's been a good 17 and a half years with the city, so thanks.
Great. Thank you, Wayne, for all your service and work for the city. You'll be missed. That's all we have. So I guess we can adjourn at a few minutes to 9 o'clock. So call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.